Okay, I messaged Joel. All right. Well, let's call the Bristol Select Board meeting to order at 6:32 p.m. on Monday, February 27th, 2023. Item 1, review agenda for addition, removal, or adjustment of any items. And you have one, I believe, Val.
Correct. We would like to propose adding a grant application authorization request on behalf of the Recreation Department and Teen Center for a grant to the Vermont Children's Trust Fund for up to $15,000 proposal.
Okay, let's do, let me take a look and see. Taylor is on. So why don't we add that right at the top, because I feel that that's going to be very quick and in regular business. So we'll do if that's okay with folks, just add it before our item 1.
Mm-hmm.
Would that be okay? Item 0? Because I think that's going to take literally 5 minutes.
Signed out.
All right.
But I'm still showing.
Grant app.
So it's
Okay.
okay, right?
Should be.
Okay. I just didn't want to hit that little X.
Are you still? Is that
They can see me.
they can see you?
Yeah, it just says you're signed out for another session or something.
See what we got here. We've got Joel is on his way and Peeker is going to be zooming in. Okay. All right. All right. Okay, so that's good. We all set there?
Not sure.
You seem set. What was the?
Well, it keeps telling us we're getting kicked out. So can you hear us though?
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, you're fine.
We can hear
We
you.
haven't had any interruption.
Okay, then we're good.
Yeah, we're good.
Thank you.
Okay, great. All right, so I've added that as item 0 for the grant application. Item 2, review of Zoom meeting operations and procedures, rules for participation. Please mute your microphones, be recognized by myself, the chair, if you wish to speak. Item 2 this evening, public forum. Anyone have anything for public forum this evening? This is 5 minutes to discuss anything that is not on the agenda for this evening. All right, I will remind folks that next week, our meeting is in person upstairs in Holly Hall. This is town meeting day, or no, town meeting evening, whatever you want to call it. And there'll be a police informational meeting, police district informational meeting at 6:30 p.m. upstairs in Holly Hall. And then we will move into a 7 p.m. town meeting in the same place. And that'll be in person. We haven't done that in 3 years, I think. And now it's back. And for town meeting, we'll have our town moderator, and she will be running through the agenda and our articles to be voted on. It's a be floor votes for those articles, and then there'll be a few Australian ballot votes the following day on election day on the Tuesday. Did I miss anything? I think that's right. That we will have, so it'll be in person, we'll be on stage, select board and town officials will be on stage, audience members obviously in the audience, and then we'll also have a Zoom option too if you wish to join via Zoom. And one thing via the Zoom, since it's floor votes, only people who are in the hall will be able to vote on the articles. Anyone zooming in may ask questions, submit questions via the chat, and we'll endeavor to answer those as the evening goes along. That's all I've got. Okay, let's continue to move on. So item 3, this is the annual police district meeting, public information meeting. It's a meeting. All right, this is an opportunity to discuss with our Chief of Police, Bruce Nason, who's here on Zoom in the town offices, for the police district, the police district budget for this upcoming year, and any other questions you might have. I don't know, Bruce, if you want to share a couple words with regard to the department and what's been happening, if you'd like to.
Well, it's business as usual. The biggest change in our budget this year was the salary increases. And that was due to a negotiated contract between the police union members and the town.
All of the documents for the police department, including the warning, the sample ballot, the police district report, the budget, and the capital vehicle plan, they're posted to the website. Do you want to, Ian, do you want to call any of those up and do a screen share of any
Yeah, I
of
can
those
do that.
documents?
Sure. Yeah, each of those things, the report, the budget, and the capital plan are also available in the town report as well. Let me just share my screen for that. I can. I'll attempt to share my screen. Oh, that's weird. I can't seem to see. Hang on a sec. Slight technical difficulty here. Can you see it down in the corner? Val, would you be able to, I'll make you a co-host if you could share those. For some reason, it's not coming up to be able to share them. It's probably some Zoom glitch. Let me make you a co-host. Where do you wander? Oh, you're town of Bristol, Val?
Yeah, there's two town of Bristols.
I know. That must, it's, oh, so you're in there. Okay, perfect. Thank you.
So can you see a screen I'm sharing?
Yeah.
Yep.
There's a police department
Is
budget.
it, okay, the budget. Because I have multiple screens, so I don't know which one you're actually seeing.
Yes. Yeah, that tab is there.
Yeah, okay.
Super. Okay.
Another factor in the increase in the budget are insurances, the insurance premiums, and just cost of materials, like so many other things.
Yeah. All right. Okay. So overall, it's an from our prior budget, it's an 18.8% increase. All right, you want to switch over to the capital plan?
And this capital replacement plan, the vehicle replacement plan is based upon replacing a vehicle every 2 years instead of every 3 years. That way it preserves the resale value of the vehicle that's being transitioned out. And it also provides more flexibility when officers need
No,
more
that's
than
not
one vehicle at a
correct.
time.
Valerie, that's not quite correct.
No?
That reflects going from 2 cars to 3 cars. We still trade them every 6 years. But we buy a new one every 2 years.
Oh,
Correct.
okay.
All right.
So I didn't want the public to think we're buying a new cruiser every 2 years.
Right. No, I appreciate the
We
correction.
are buying a new cruiser, but it's replacing a 6-year-old cruiser.
Right. Okay. And I put the links to those documents are in the Zoom chat here for people watching. right, and then the Bruce's report for the police department for 2022 can also be found in the links I just put in the chat, and also in the town report, this year's, or the 2022 town report. And then in terms of the police district budget, that's Australian ballot vote on Tuesday, or you can receive your ballot earlier and pick that up from the town offices and deliver it by end of day Tuesday by 7 p.m. Tuesday the 7th. And it will be a vote on the, it's an Article 1 vote. It's a single piece of paper, and that's voting on the police district budget for this year. Okay. All right. Any questions from the public? Anyone zooming in, or anyone else have any questions, board members or anybody else about the police district? All righty. Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Bruce. Okay, let's continue. We will move on. Here we go. Item 4, department head roundtable. Let's start with Sharon, town clerk.
Okay, as we know, the election is next week. I'm still trying to get individuals to help me. One, which is the hardest, is getting 2 people to go to the Hannaford Career Center and staying and help count votes. So still dealing with that. Sewer bills are going out tomorrow. I processed them today, but they didn't go anywhere because my lovely admin assistant fell yesterday and broke her wrist in 2 places. So she will be having surgery on Thursday. So I don't have Gail for, I don't know how long. Val will be here tomorrow and Thursday, and of course she'll be here next week to help me. So we're hoping for a speedy recovery. Right now, it's pretty much election, though I don't think we're going to have as many people turn out on election day. I think we're going to have quite a few on Monday night because I've already had questions. So in fact, I had some today, people asking if when they were Zooming in, that they would only be able to listen and they would not be able to vote. And I told them that's accurate. They would have to show up if they want to place a vote on Monday night. So I think we might have a fairly decent turnout Monday night because we haven't had one since 2020. So
yeah, did people voice frustration about not being able to vote remotely?
no,
or did
no,
they just
wanted
accepting
to confirm. Yeah.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay. All right. Well, that's good. Any questions for Sharon this evening? All right. Thank you very much, Sharon.
You're welcome.
Let's move on to, I gotta see who's on here. Meredith, Recreation Department, and Taylor too.
Right. So we had a great successful February break swim session. We were able to provide lessons, and then we were able also to provide community swim. And we were able to do pickleball sessions over at BES. So big thank you to the schools, BES and MAOC, to allow us into there. We just also did theater with the Bristol Gateway Players, and it was a success. Every day was, I think Sunday we had 40 folks in the audience, so that was really cool. And then we've started our interview process for the recreations coordinator. We're do a few interviews this week, and hopefully we'll come up to a decision to present to you Monday next week. So excited about that. Other than that, we're just plugging away at at designing and keeping programs healthy and alive here at the rec department.
All right, thank you. Yeah, the swim was great. We came on Wednesday, had a great time. Seemed like a lot of people there. And I know that the lessons were popular as well. So that's awesome to hear. Any questions from Meredith this evening? All right, thank you, Meredith. Anything from you, Taylor, in terms of the Hubland?
Yeah, I just wanted to hop on and give a quick update for folks, and excuse if there's some background noise. I'm in Arlo's room while he's playing. So we've had another busy video. I can't give the data like I usually can. We're actually piloting a new sign-in system that Brian LeClaire reached out and coded. He had coded the sign-in system for teen centers ultimately, and he reached out and asked if we want to pilot it. So we are, but we're kind of working in like conjunction with him, like as a partnership. So as it goes, we're getting all the reporting data that we need, or like all the tools. So I don't have the ease of access to the data that I usually do, but it's still a really cool sign-in system. So far, the teens love it. It's a lot easier to use than what we were using. And I know that we will get I think ultimately the reporting data will be, like, it'll be easier to collect data and pull reports. In the end, it's still just kind of in the funny in-between state.
What does it give you? What does it give you over the sign-in system that you previously used?
So right now, it's more, there are more options. So it is more customizable basically than what there was. And it's easier to use for the sign-in. So if anyone had ever used our sign-in, it was a drop-down menu that was just, kids had to scroll to find their names, and it was fairly clunky. And we had a lot of false sign-ins and just things like this. And so now the sign-in system is just like, they type their name and it like goes automatically, and it's really like clean and there aren't errors, which is really cool.
Right.
Nearly as many. It allows for us to put in contact information on every teen, so we can have their like parental contact information and emergency contact. We can add notes on every profile. So just a lot of like data that we can collect for our safety and for our records that'll be beneficial. And like I said, since Brian's kind of coding it as we're going, we are creating, there's more and more opportunity for it to be, improved.
Okay, fantastic.
But so, sorry, go ahead, Ian.
No, it's great.
But yeah, so that's a cool thing. And then we just had a washer and dryer installed this past week, which we're really excited about. So Jackman's, Irwin Electric, and White Dog Construction pulled together and installed this washer and dryer that's been sitting in our bathroom since September. So it was really cool to get it in and like working today.
And this is at the teen center, not your house.
Correct. Yeah, this is at the teen center.
Just to clarify.
But yeah, and so we've just been plugging along, and we're excited to, like Meredith said, we're interviewing for the new position to fill the role, and we're excited to get someone else in there and have the full staff again.
Great, fantastic, thank you. Any questions for Taylor? All right, thank you very much. We had an update from Bruce from the police department, and I don't see anyone else on.
I visited with Eric earlier today, and he said there really isn't that much to report. They kept up with the snow plowing. His vehicle needs a little bit of repair, but they're working on a belt came off, and they're going to be working on that.
Okay, and it looks like the sidewalk plow is plowing the sidewalk, so that's great. That must be working.
Can I just interject? When you mention sidewalk, just remind people that are parking near the sidewalk or the side of the road to make sure they're at least 2 feet from either one of those. Some people forget that their mirrors extend out past their vehicle, and we don't want to damage anything and interfere with the sidewalk plow.
Okay, good. Thank you, Bruce.
Yeah.
All right, let's continue. We'll move to regular business. We added a new one at the top of this meeting. which was a grant application approval. Val?
So hopefully folks had a chance to glance at the request, the authorization form that Taylor had provided for the children's, I don't have it in front of me, but it's for $15,000 to support the Teen Center programming.
Yep. I am fine with that. I don't have any questions. Board members, do you have any questions?
Vermont Children's Trust Foundation.
This is expansion of outdoor programs, new shed for storage, new bikes, other outdoor gear, and program funding for Hub and Recreation Department. Application amount $15,000. No other matching funds needed.
Meredith, did they get permission for that extra that shed on Rec Club property?
No, it would be to replace the shed that's in existence along the
That
side
great
of
big
the
building along the
hub.
Legion fence? I mean, that great big building along the Legion fence? The
Mhm.
hub? I'm just joking. But no, if you're gonna put another shed up, we should ask. But if you're gonna replace, I don't.
Exactly. So we didn't have a BRC meeting this last month. So we have one on the 16th this week or this month. So we'll follow up with them, but I'll send out an email to Troy. I know that they have a landscaper that likes to make sure things are nice and neat over there.
Okay. I don't see an issue with this grant application, so I'd take a motion if someone had one.
I'll make a motion that we approve it.
And I'll
Thank
second.
you. Thank you. All right, we have a motion and a second. Any further discussion on this grant application? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye, raise your hand. Aye.
No.
Thank you. All those in favor, or all those against rather, nay. Motion carries. All right, thank you, Taylor. Thank you, Meredith.
Thank you.
Good luck with that. All righty. Okay, moving on to item 1. This is Steve Palmer from VTM Engineering and Jill Marsano from VTOMS. This is for the Water District. Consider proposal to take a phased approach to replacing the 1905 water lines.
I see that
All right.
Steve is zoomed in. I don't see
Yep.
Jill. I just made Steve a co-host in case he would like to share his screen because he and Jill prepared a nice presentation to introduce the proposal.
Okay. Good evening, Steve. You're muted, Steve.
Spacebar.
Steve, you're muted.
That again. How's that? Is any better?
Much
That's
better.
better, Steve.
Hey, good evening, everybody. Hey, I'm down here in sunny Atlanta. We had a family emergency, had to run out of town. Jill and I and Valerie have been working on this presentation, and I'm sorry, I sent it to Jill earlier this afternoon, and she has the final. And
I can
thought she was
share
gonna
it
be on.
too. Yeah,
Okay.
I'll pull it up.
I wouldn't be surprised if she doesn't tune in till 7.
Right.
Yeah, I just texted her and told her she was on base.
Yeah, I was planning on sitting in the background here.
Oh, that's right. We're 4 minutes early. Okay.
Yeah.
Well,
So
we will get that shared, and then I think we'll just continue and have Jill join.
perfect. You know, the background on this is really, you've got the majority of the distribution system that's approaching 125 years old. It's way beyond its useful life expectancy. And what that means, in layman's terms, really is, pipe, especially of this vintage, is typically a 60 to 80 year, has a 60 to 80 year lifespan. We're way beyond that. And what it means to you guys is you're seeing significant leakage rates. Hopefully Jill jumps in here and talks a little about the things that she's experiencing in the field today. They're having an awful hard time even locating a lot of the leaks that are happening. The leakage rates are increasing, you guys. Last I looked, I think we were at about a 55% leakage rate. When I talked to Jill earlier over the weekend, she said that's increasing, and she can give you exact numbers when she jumps in with us. And there's a bunch of leaks that they just can't find. I mean, the town sits on 100 feet of gravel. And that's one of the difficulties, especially with older pipes. If you don't have a catastrophic leak where it's, 40, 50, 60 gallons a minute, and you have hundreds of little leaks, they're impossible to find. So, and that's really what I believe you guys are experiencing today. So you're seeing these, I call it death by 1,000 cuts, but you get leaks throughout the system. And there really is no fix for this other than replacement. So, all right. So here's, this is all, by the way, 1905 water line. Today, they would line any cast iron line with cement. So you wouldn't get this buildup. This is mostly iron that you see built up on the inside of this pipe. This is what the great majority of the piping that's in the ground today looks like. So when you have, let's say, an 8-inch diameter pipe, it's no longer an 8-inch diameter pipe. And in addition to that, all of your joints and things like that are leaking. So you can expect every 20 feet, you probably have a small leak. Okay, can we go to the next slide, please? Just
Trying to, I'm gonna have to stop sharing.
You can jump.
Can't get it.
You can use the arrows at the very top. I can jump in. Yeah, sure.
Yeah, I couldn't get them. Couldn't get to them.
Let's see what I can do. All right.
Okay, is Jill on?
Yes, I am.
Hi, Jill. Sorry, I didn't mean to jump in. We were just kind of passing time while you got on.
No, it's fine. I thought the meeting started at 7. I'm like, why is everybody in such a rush? They're early tonight.
It did. Apologies, Jill. The police
Sorry,
district meeting is
guys.
usually quite short, and then we just sort
How
of
you
went
doing?
right into the meeting.
This is Lucy, by
All
the
right.
way.
Hi, Lucy.
Go ahead,
All
Jill.
right.
I didn't mean to jump in. We were just at the beginning of the presentation.
No, I think that's good. Go ahead and do the project background. This is the engineering part.
Jill, if you don't mind, just jump right in because I've got two little
Okay.
ones here that are demanding. some-
Okay, I'll go for it then.
Thank you.
So some of this is going to sound repetitive to what we went over for Pine Street, given the fact that Pine Street is really the third of the 1905 water line replacement projects. And it's the same premise. There's just more of them than just Pine Street. So Bristol completed a preliminary engineering report to evaluate the existing water distribution system and develop a comprehensive plan to replace portions of the aging water system infrastructure as needed. This PER was completed in August of 21 and approved by the state in September of 21. So it's quite new. It's only 2 years old, not even 2 years old. It's 1.5 years old. So we kind of went from there and picked, okay, let's do Pine Street first. And right now we're moments away from signing up for the 2023 SRF program to be able to get that project hopefully constructed this year. So that's the project background, and we'll go to the next slide, please. So the PER findings was that the distribution system consists of about 58,000 linear feet of water main. We're not even talking about water services right here in this discussion, which another discussion we should, but this is just the actual distribution mains. So the current distribution system leakage rate exceeds 55%, which represents approximately 45 million gallons a year. Not going to anybody. This percentage is expected to increase without significant capital investment to replace major portions of the distribution system. For comparison, the typical municipal water system leakage rate is approximately 16% according to AWWA. And for perspective, American Water Works Association is looking at the entire country. So they're not saying, compared to other water systems from the early 1900s, this is the leakage rate. They're saying compared to all water systems in the country, 16% is typical. We're very
much higher and probably older than some of them, and definitely above. The PER recommended that approximately 33,000 linear feet, so 57% of the entire system, be replaced. The great majority of the distribution piping recommended for replacement is cast iron pipe, which you saw above and what it looks like, with lead joints that were installed in 1905, 123 years old. So those lead joints get packed together with horsehair, and they are push joints like this. So they push, pack them with lead and horsehair, and you can kind of imagine that over time, that packing is going to spread a bit and allow for some leakage in those lines. This pipe is significantly beyond its anticipated useful life expectancy, which would be 60 to 80 years. It's exceeding 100 years old. It's like almost 120 years old, as a matter of fact. There's no viable alternative to distribution system replacement. We haven't yet figured out how to move water without a containment system. If ever we could, it would be so cool. But we don't have one yet. Next slide. So this is what it looks like when there's a water leak on a service that goes across a road. You end up having to cut across the entire road to replace that service. And so you end up with the cut in the road, the pavement repair, and kind of that discoloration of the pavement, because you've got different colors from the initial surface and the new, and that little like bump. No matter how good you are at paving and how much you compact that soil, you're always going to have a little bump. And it's just, there's lots of bumps on Pine Street and many of the other streets in town. If you drive through other towns in Vermont, you're going to see them there too. Especially some surrounding towns near us that have public water systems. I won't specifically name them, but if you travel around, you'll see them in other spots. That's what those generally are. At the current pace of replacement, it'll take approximately, this is not true. I don't think this is the right one, Steve.
Yeah, I didn't bring this up, Jill. I think this is on Valerie's. I'm not sure.
This is on mine. This is what I had in terms of what we received.
Okay.
So I do see it. It says draft. I do see it says draft. So I'll stop this because I don't want too much to be incorrect from what you're talking about.
Let me drop you the, or do you want me to share my screen? The file was just done.
If you've got it open and you can control and share, I'll make you a co-host. Hang on one
Give me
second.
just 2 more seconds to get the file opened up. Right. Yes, I thought something looked fishy.
Sorry about that. You might, Val, can you make her a co-host? I can't seem to do that anymore.
Okay, guys, I've been out of marketing for a couple years. Which button do I push to be in presentation mode?
For PowerPoint?
Mm-hmm.
First, she's in, now she's a co-host, and there's a
Okay,
share
good.
screen.
Well, she needs to be for presentation and then opening it up and then sharing screen. Presentation, let's see, PowerPoint, where's that? Oh gosh.
Slideshow?
Yeah, up on the top, slideshow, yep.
Oh,
Okay, there we
yeah.
go. Nice. And then,
Oh, so nice.
and then in Zoom, hit the share screen at the bottom middle green button, and then you should be able to select your window to share, and then control as normal. In theory.
Can you guys see this?
No, you need to share your screen before we can see it.
Oh, okay. Oh, no.
In Zoom.
Okay, I'm going. Sorry for being technology challenged for a minute here. I used to be really super good at this stuff.
Use it or lose it.
I know. I've been doing too much waterline stuff. Where are you, Zoom? There you are. Oh, this is so weird. I don't know where you guys went. Share screen. Ooh,
And then pick your window.
this is good. Oh, and you guys just came back. Yay.
You might want to, well, let's see. Can you do your presentation? So go down to your doc and then click on, there we go.
And
And
then
then present,
Darla told me to go to,
slideshow, and then play from current slide. There we go.
come on button.
Just the way we'd have done it, right, Beaker?
All right.
And I'm showing my technology age. Oh, blah, 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 blah. Blah,
Oh,
blah.
it's very
You
difficult.
got
It's part of that.
You
They showed the
got a
graph.
12-year-old in there, side house, you could let them
He's
do it.
here, but he would think this is even worse than I do. All right, slideshow. Play from current. Okay.
Oh,
skip.
look at that. Perfect. There we go.
That's about the same. Ooh, there's more pictures in this. See? So this is
Great.
what a cast iron pipe, which is right here, and an old iron pipe service looks like. And that's what ends up, well, the whole thing is pretty much failing in this picture. But these little connectors fail. The pipe just kind of turns into what I would call a salt shaker and fails. So we've got lots of this going on in town. So between the pipe and the service lines, which I think there'll be opportunities for service line money, both on the customer and the town side coming soon after the inventory's done. So I'm not super worried about that in this discussion, but just know that it is part of the full solution someday. That's the typical section of water main that you guys got to see, and all the tuberculation of minerals that attach really nicely to cast iron. This is what a water leak looks like on a 4-inch main. That's Rockydale. That's the two boulders that decided to kind of crunch together and make a nice radial crack. So that was making 116 sink. That was a forced repair on a Saturday, but it's fixed. Okay, so recent water main replacement projects. Bristol has completed. This is being blocked by pictures of people. There we go. Several 1905 water main replacement projects since 2005. Pine Street is slated for construction in 2023 pending the DWSRF funding. Again, that application is going in for that March 1st deadline. Those projects include in 2005, North Street was about 1640 linear feet. That went from Pine to Plank. In 2017, there was West Street, which was 2,815 linear feet from Airport to Maple. And then this year, 2023, it'll be 2,600 linear feet from North to the town garage. This equates to an average replacement of 392 feet of water main per year since 2005. Following the Pine Street project, Bristol will have roughly 30,400 feet of 1905 water main replacement remaining. At this current pace, completion will take 77.5 years. And if you look at the age of the rest of the water lines, by the time we got this done, everything else would be more than 100 years old as well. And there's like 55,000 linear feet. So we'd have another 25 to do after that. Bristol's engineering consultant, as well as the town's water system operator, so Steve and us, have advised that the 1905 piping is way beyond its useful life expectancy. At the current rate of replacement, major portions of the 1905 distribution piping will lose their functional capacity long before they're able to be replaced. Additionally, failure to address 1905 portions of the water distribution system within a reasonable time frame will result in ever-increasing replacement costs, an ever-increasing overall system leakage rate, which we're seeing it right now, increased emergency repair costs and frequency, decreasing of pavement quality due to repairs, those bumps, increased potential for isolation valve failures, because with that water line replacement comes the replacement of those valves, increased potential. There's too many potentials there, but that's okay. We got a lot of potential, guys. For system-wide shutdowns to address major failures, increased risk of distribution system contamination. So if we were ever in a loss of pressure situation, when a water line is not tight and it has leakage, it sucks in instead of pushing out. That's where that potential for distribution system contamination comes in. And increased annual operational costs, including electricity, increased wear on equipment, chlorine, as well as staff and consulting time. So that is the road that we already looked at. That's why I kind of thought we were looking at the wrong one, because pictures were missing and some more good words. So replacement alternatives, we've got 3 alternatives here. We could certainly come up with more, but we kind of thought, let's go for the top 3. Continue at the current pace of replacement, which would be over 77 years. Replace all the water mains as part of one large project, or split the town into different geographic areas and complete the replacement in manageable sections, one area at a time. So alternative 1, continue at the current pace of replacement, which is the 77 plus years. Advantage, the distribution will be limited to 1 street at a time. There'd be numerous smaller bond vote increases and likelihood of passage. So it'd be a little easier on people to do just a little bit at a time. However, the bond votes are 20 and 30 years. And by the time you do one every 3 years, for instance, you're going to have a lot of different bond votes to keep track of also. You can picture that. You put one on, every 3 years, one drops off, every 3 years, another comes on. You end up with a whole lot of bond votes. Roughly 77 years to replace all the 1905 water mains at the current pace. Bristol's consultant, as well as the town's water system operator, have advised that this piping is way beyond its useful life expectancy, which we've already talked about. Inflation is creating an ever increasing for replacement costs. The overall system leakage rates can be expected to increase each year. Increased emergency repair costs, again, as we already said, decreased pavement quality, increased potential for larger or system-wide failures, requiring town-wide system shutdowns, which would be absolute misery. Increased risk of distribution system contamination, again, because if it's not coming out, it's going in. And then increased annual operational costs, which we've talked about. Alternative 2, which is, I'll call it the Big Bang. Replace all the 1905 water lines as part of one large project. So I actually went to Steve first and said, hey, Steve, can we do this? Can we just do all of it at once? What do you think? So here's the advantages. Completes the project over a much shorter period of time. Reduced overall replacement costs due to economy of scale, as well as reduced inflationary costs. Disadvantages. This is where Steve brought me kind of back down to earth, which, you know, makes me a bit sad, but it's also part of being practical. It's unlikely that the drinking water state revolving fund, the DWSRF, will actually fund a single replacement project of this scale. So this is basically, this drinking water SRF fund is approximately $20 to $30 million in any year. And there are hundreds of water systems in the state. So if we say we want $12 million, we want to do all our 1905, the likelihood of them allowing us to receive that funding all at once, while there's so many other requests in there, is not very high. The majority of the town would be under construction at the same time, with the possibility of multiple contractors causing significant impacts to residents and the business community. Traffic control as well as utility disruptions would likely be chaotic. We knew what it was like just to get down North Street on the first project, what it was like to go down West Street on the second project, and how annoyed people are going to be with Pine Street and this third project. So I can only imagine if we were doing 14 streets all at once. Also, it would require gaining voter approval for a very large bond and at least double the water rates. So if we look at the math of the water rates now and what this bond for Pine Street is going to do to water rates, and then we take that and multiply it with a $12+ million project, water rates would more than double just with that one bond vote. And I think it would be quite hard to pass. Alternative 3 would be to split the town into geographic areas for replacement. So the premise of this one, my question to Steve when he burst my bubble a bit and said, you really can't do it all at once. Or it would be super, super hard and a very uphill battle. I said, okay, how much can we do at once? So his recommendation was no more than 10,000 linear feet, which is about 2 miles, just under 2 miles. And, you know, see if you can't make it so that they're kind of in the same areas, so that the traffic control and the disruption is kind of like geographically in a similar area. So the concept would be to complete each geographic area in a 3-year time span to include design, permitting, funding, and construction. So to really step up the pace. reduce replacement costs due to economy of scale, as well as reduced inflationary costs over alternative 1, which is the 77 plus years. Traffic and utility disruptions would be limited to one area of town at a time, and the DWSRF would be much more likely to fund these individual moderately sized projects. So asking for a couple million or a few million versus tens of millions. What we didn't say here was also that the likelihood of passing the bond vote is probably also better, and the increases to user rates would be more manageable. There's potentially the disadvantage is that it's potentially more costly given the likely inflation over the coming years versus alternative. Actually meant to say alternative 2, which was the Big Bang. All right, we'll keep going here. So this is a flip picture of the preliminary engineering report. What I want to point out to you guys is anything that's in the preliminary engineering report has already had its step 1 engineering done, which means it doesn't have to go through a study again in order to get funded under the SRF program. But what I want to point out is that there are line segments from 1983 right here on Liberty Street, 1984 on Mountain Street, some more 1968 on Mountain Street, 1983 on Crescent Street, and that's about it. Those were put in here because of fire flows. I did remove them from this current set of calculations because I think what we're trying to do is get through these almost 120-year-old water lines versus trying to replace everything for fire flows specifically. Our thought process as well is that the fire flows would increase significantly by increasing the volumes, putting in 8-inch lines and 12-inch lines, for instance, versus these 4-inch and 6-inch lines. And that, yeah, after that, the PER has been done in these other ones that are fire flow. So we could, you know, conceptually be able to move ahead with design and construction of those kind of after getting the super, super old projects, the old water lines done in projects, and not make the pain even larger. So when we get to the next one, you'll see that those not 1905 water lines are just for this exercise not included. But if you guys decide you want them because we're touching the road, they're in the PER. This is what the service area looks like. This is the entire service area. So you can see we're kind of a cool shape. That Rocky Dale's way over. And Plank Road's got some good coverage. And we'll go into how we kind of divvied up the system. Rocky Dale's kind of its own baby, given that it's actually serviced from the tank. And it's kind of an old cast iron water line that used to come from the opposite end. The water supply used to come from Lincoln. So this was like the first service, and then everything went up to the tank, and now everything comes up to the tank, which is right here. One line comes down to Rocky Dale. We've got one that comes down Mountain Terrace, and then we have this other odd Bingham line that comes down on East Street. Hydraulically, I have yet to learn exactly why it's there, besides that it's a second feed down to the distribution system. But so we kind of broke it out. We've got west, south, the center, east, and Rocky Dale. There's a tiny little key down there, but I'm not going to challenge anybody's eyes to try to see that. So this is kind of color coding of everything that's 1905. Way down at the bottom, you're going to see Pine Street. So Pine Street is only there in this exercise because it's already been designed and we're hopefully going into construction this year. So what's left is we squished everything together on the west side and colored it green and thought conceivably, if you did that part first, you'd end up increasing your water flow capacity on that far west side of town, which is going to benefit your school, etc., and your new business park over there for fire flows. And it also takes care of the rest of the west side of town. Like, you've already started the west side. This would finish the west side, and it would keep it just under 10,000 linear feet, or quite close to. And then we take the east side and grab everything there. And I'll show you the summary on the next line. And then everything kind of in the center which is like Main Street, North Street, and we just scooped in Park Place and School Street because it's kind of where the most amount of businesses are. That'll probably be the most painful project from the disruption of businesses perspective. And also there's some pretty big water lines under that Main Street going into the buildings. Oh, and Kitty's doing bad things over there. And then at the bottom, we've got the Pump House Road and South Street just kind of separate, and the reservoir a bit separate. So we'll kind of pop into here. This is what it looks like when you do all of them together, how many linear feet are in each area. If we add up all the linear feet in each area, we estimate the construction cost to be about $400 per linear feet. So before bids started getting open this winter, Steve and I had both thought that 300 a linear feet might be appropriate. And then bids started getting opened, not here in Bristol, but in other municipalities and private water systems, and everything's coming in 25 to 30% over estimate. So we decided to put 400 there so that we're being realistic. And also this isn't happening today. This is happening like maybe after today. So the west side would be something like 3.5 million. The east side would be another 2.6 million. The center would be another 1.7 or 1.8 million. And again, the center's where all the businesses are. So as far as thinking about the impacts of that one and traffic control, that's probably going to be a lot trickier for a contractor than the ones that are in neighborhoods. Yeah, exactly. The ones that are not in the PER, the South Street and the tank rundowns. So the tank rundowns are technically in the PER. And South Street is not in the PER. I'm not exactly sure why, but in order to do those projects, because there might be a different way to approach the Rockydale service, and because there might be a different, just different approaches, that might need kind of an alternatives analysis to be done to think about the most cost-effective way of doing those. And also, like, if we're talking about running down a ledgy mountain, that's probably not $400 a linear foot. That's probably a much more expensive construction cost. So there might be a better way to go about that to just think outside of the box and possibly serve it from the main part of town instead of down off the tank on the Rockydale side, for instance, or I don't know. There's lots of different things that could be done over there. It's just that would be an alternatives analysis in the future. And then the current Pine Street project is the 2300. Let's see. What do you have for questions?
A question regarding the money.
Yes.
So with your grant from the DWRSF, that knocks it in half. Right, 50% grant. Can we also apply for additional grants to support this project? Is there any limitations to that, given that we have this already 50% handled potentially by the DWRSF grant?
If other funding programs exist that can pair with the drinking water SRF program, then you can. There was a time back in like the early 2000s, I remember working with a water system that had 10 funding sources for $27 million. And so it was a rural development grant and a couple EPA STAG grants and some SRF funding and some special like remediation funds. And it was a super combination of funding like I've never seen ever again. But who knows? I mean, if other funding sources came about, especially ones that are grants that can pair with SRF, it'd be awesome. I haven't seen many in recent years.
Our hope with Bristol's ARPA funding, one of the top choices that the public and the committee came up with is a grant writing position for the town that would support projects exactly like this. So if we can pull that together, hopefully fairly soon, we might have the option to have someone who can be searching for those things for us for a project just like this. But
Sure,
having
okay.
that 50% grant is pretty darn good too.
But Jill,
Go ahead, Joe.
Michelle,
go ahead,
Okay.
Michelle, you were first.
Joe, question. I mean, if I understand that, if you're doing this in sections, you're saying every 3 years you're going to do a different section. Is that the plan?
Conceivably, yes.
Yeah. So we would still be asking for a bond every 3 years because there's no way that this is going to be paid off within the 3 years that each
You're
one
right.
gets done.
You're right. Yep. I think it, and if you think about a bond every 3 years, so it would be like year zero would be, for instance, maybe next year. So that would be like 2024. And then you'd go for the east side in 2027, 2030, 2033, 2036. Yeah, so basically in 13 years, you'd end up in 13 years instead of 77.
Starting all over again, though.
Yeah.
Well, no, then you start looking at your 1980 lines and your
Right.
2000. Yeah.
But that's what I'm saying. You're kind
68
of starting
lines.
the process.
68.
Right. You're
Jill,
going for the,
couple of questions. So each one of those is a 50% if they give it to you, and they may not, if they, let's say they do one the first third year and then they don't do the second one. You're still hoping for 50% like we were for West Street, where we didn't get anything or very little from USDA. And my other question, I'll let you comment on that first, I guess.
yeah, the thing that's really hard about the SRF program is that it changes every single year.
Right.
So it all depends on what they get for federal money and what the terms are attached to that federal money. And we're kind of in a period where they're getting additional funds because of kind of COVID relief. So it's bumped up the program and allowed for more loan forgiveness. I've seen years where it only goes to the top 3 projects and it's 50 or 75%. I've seen years where it's only 25% or it's 0%. And some of it is very dependent on the income of that community. So it's looking at your median household income compared to the state median household income and how far above or below you are.
Okay.
Yeah.
My next $1 million question, sorry, Ian. My next $1 million question is the Rockydale slope sideline. Hate to say this, but would we be more cost effective if we drilled them all a well and banded it?
Trust me, that was one of the thoughts for the alternative.
There can't be more than 50 customers up there. And that's a huge chunk of change right there, 2.3 million.
Yes.
40 customers, I'm just guessing there's probably about 40 users up there. Do like they did when they abandoned the Lincoln line and they drilled everybody a well up on Briggs Hill and all the way down to the Twin Bridge. The lower Twin Bridge.
That's one of the alternatives would be to drill individual wells. Another would be to put a small water system with a pump station down there. And another one would be to actually service them, like finish running it from East Street over to Rockydale and take the mountain run away.
Yeah. And
go ahead, Steve.
Yeah, I was going to say 2 things related to that line. My understanding, I have not done a lot of research on that particular line, Jill, and I've heard this from Alan as well, that it's extremely shallow. So if we were using state fund, I mean, typically you would try to get down, 6 feet of cover, and to do that, it would require blasting all the way across that mountain. So it would be extremely expensive. I'm sure there would be a significant water disruption in the process, and I'm sure it would be a lot more than the 2.3 million that's shown in that table. That was just a standard per foot figure. So I would advise the town, before doing that line, go through exactly what you just suggested, which is an alternatives analysis. And I'm sure that there's a much more cost-effective way to do this than trying to go across that mountain today. So the other is about the subsidy. So each of these, realize that this isn't a grant. You are actually bonding for the full amount of the project. When the project is completed, the state is, assuming you follow all the rules, the state will forgive 50% of the cost of that bond. You're going to know that up front before you start the project. They're going to tell you what the project funding is before you ever sign an agreement with them. So it's not guesswork. There's also, and what Jill hit on, some of this is income sensitivity as well. So I like to call it as a subsidy. So think of it as for every dollar that you spend, the federal government's going to kick in 50 cents of that. The additional subsidy comes into play when they look at what the median income of the town is. So if the median, and it varies every year, and the state looks at it on an ongoing basis. So when you go in, for instance, for a project this year, they're going to look at what the median income of the town is versus the rest of the state. If you're below the median income, you will, in all likelihood, get additional subsidy up to another 10%. So you may only have to pay 40% of the project out of pocket. So it's a pretty significant subsidy. And like I said, you're going to know that all up front. This isn't like some of the other programs where you don't really know what you're going to pay until you're way into the project. That doesn't happen. Everything's very transparent with DWSRF.
Yeah, and I might sound like a naysayer here for a moment financially with development in town, but you may want to consider creating some type of impact fee when you have new connections that starts to put money towards the system. Because it's the current connection fee is really just covering the cost of the stuff that it takes to connect in like a teeny little fee. And I'm saying teeny, it doesn't necessarily feel teeny to a person that's building a home there. But as you're putting larger businesses and other things in town, you can certainly charge an impact fee for the fact that the water system now has to provide another, 3 million gallons a year that has to pass through these other lines to get to them. So it's just a thought that's how other larger municipalities are funding some of these necessary upgrades, is that as they're developing inside of their town, or even as flows are increasing, or they're looking at their fee structure, there is thought and consideration for how the users are utilizing the actual distribution system on a water side and the collection system on the wastewater side.
Okay, and those impact fees are usually significant. One last thing, a lot of the larger municipalities are doing this in a step process. What happens, the DWSRF funds, if they're not utilized within a 3-year period, they have to give them back to the feds, and the state doesn't want to do that. They have control over how those funds get distributed, but ultimately they go back to the funds if they don't get the feds, sorry, if they don't get spent. So what happens with many of these projects, we're all assigned a timeline. For instance, on Pine Street, they're going to give you a set timeline for things to get done. If you don't accomplish that in a set timeline, they're going to toss you out of the program, and they're going to give the money to another community that can use it because they don't want to give it back to the feds. So they want it to be spent here in Vermont. That's the bottom line. So some of these projects slip. So this is almost, I use the term shovel ready, and we've all heard it, right? If you have a project that is designed, that is permitted, that's on the books, and you're waiting for funding, Pine Street's a perfect example. If there were a project to come along today from another community that didn't make the deadlines that were set, there would be some additional amount of money out there, and the state would say, okay, we'd like to spend this money in Vermont. We're going to offer some additional subsidy in many cases. We just did one for the town of Richmond 2 years ago. It's a perfect example where they gave out 75% subsidy for a project because they needed the money to be spent within 120 days. And Richmond said, we're ready. We have our permits. We have everything designed. We're ready to put this out to bid. And they got a 75% subsidy. So I advise folks that can afford to do it to have the projects designed, permitted, and ready to go. I think there is so much federal money out there right now some of these projects are going to slip. And I think you're going to see some additional funding opportunities for the communities that are prepared to do it.
Darla, you had a question?
Yeah, I'm curious, maybe Valerie, you could answer this. At times I know that there is money from our state senators, or from our senators in Washington, I should say, for projects that can happen within communities. I'm wondering if this is the type of project that might fit into that criteria.
Yes, Darla, you're talking about earmarks, and
Yes.
as Steve said, the more shovel ready they are, the more competitive they are. And the earmarks are somewhat competitive, not always depending on the jurisdiction, but they are generally competitive.
So
But
that's the same
readiness is
funding
key.
that Steve was talking about. Okay, sorry, I knew it by a different name, so I just wanted to make sure. I was hoping I found another bucket of money for us, that's all.
Yeah.
Yeah,
That's
no, I was talking specific to DWSRF, not to earmarks.
Yeah.
Right, federal
Okay.
earmarks would be an additional source of funding.
Perfect, that's what I was hoping.
Yeah.
Back in the day, those used to be called EPA STAG grants.
Right.
So are they back, Valerie?
I don't think they're called that anymore.
Okay.
If they are, I haven't heard that term in a while.
Okay, I just wonder what they're called because of course I would love to do the super project if we could do it. It'll be a little crazy. You know, you're probably going to have to bid it out as several separate contracts. Like if you did the super project, you'd probably take this and you'd create 1, 2, 3, 4. You'd create 4 or 5 separate contracts that you'd bid out. And, you know, some large contractor might bid on all of them. Others are going to bid on the ones they feel fit them best. And you'd have a wild construction year.
Or two.
Or 3.
Right. And you may not have any businesses left when you get done with that. So
Yeah,
there's a
hey,
practical
that's-
reality of this, right?
But if you're worried about like taking advantage of the grant program while it's there, that's, you know, that one community, they needed a entire wastewater system. And if they didn't do it, the river was going to continue to be polluted and everybody's drinking water was going to continue to be polluted. And it took 10 years to actually design and build the wastewater treatment facility and the 3 collection areas. And it was 10 contracts because one of the contracts were the service connections in each of the 3 areas, the wastewater treatment facility, the collection system for the 3 areas. And what was the other one? That's 9. Anyways, there was 10. I forget what the 10th one was at this point. It's been a bit. But yeah, that's the way that you do the super project, but you would need way more funding to make it not hurt your ratepayer so badly.
I have a
Jill, can
question
you go
for
back?
Steve.
Go on, Phil.
In terms of having projects be shovel ready, and if Bristol was to invest in proceeding with design plans of one or more of these other segments or other phases, but they're not quite ready, we have to wait a while for the funding to come around. From an engineering perspective, how long can a fully designed project wait before something falls out of date or codes change or something like that? I mean, what are the risks of having a shovel ready project, but it's not funded yet?
That's a great point. Most of your so the state issues, when we're done with the design, we'll issue a permit amendment, so to speak, to the state. You have an existing operating permit today, and we'll issue a set of plans to them with a request to modify the permit. So Jill today operates underneath an existing permit. You have an existing operating permit. And with that permit, it's not just, for instance, your water treatment facility, it's your entire distribution system. So we're going to make significant modifications to that distribution system. So as part of the process to do that, for them to issue a permit, we have to give them a set of plans to say, this is the existing, this is what we're proposing changing. They'll review those plans, they'll make comments, and they'll give us a timeline to get this done. If we can't get it done in that timeline, we either need to go back for a permit, call it an amendment date, where we extend that date, or we need to go back for a new permit. So typically when the permits are issued, we tell them, here is an anticipated timeline for the project to occur. And they'll add, let's say, 6 months to a year on top of what we anticipate it'll take to get it done, and say, this project needs to be done by such and such a date. If it's not going to be, I'd need to go back to them and say, okay, we either need another year on this permit, which they would typically grant. So it wouldn't happen, you know, I don't think you could go back and say, we'd like 10 more years on this project. I don't think we're going to do that. But in that case, they'd say, come back to us when you're ready to build it.
Well, what if the design plans are finished, but you don't go for the permit amendment yet? You don't do that for another 5 years or so?
Yep.
Would the plans somehow, would they still be viable plans under the state's eyes?
Typically, yes, but I wouldn't say that's indefinite. You know, one thing that's happened with the permit process, they've come out with a general permit now, which means essentially, I need to certify to the state, they don't review it anymore. I need to certify to the state today that it meets their criteria, and that's all that's required. So it's really down to a 60-day process. So to your point, I'm not sure I would get too far ahead with the permitting process. I think I would let the plans sit on the shelf and be ready to go. In fact, I think the process that Jill was talking about, it takes about 3 years to develop a project from the time you begin the design work, get all the permits in place, put it out to bid, get the funding set, and build it. It's about a 3-year start to finish. So in order to do this on a 12 or 13-year timeline that we're talking about, you're going to need to have these projects in multiple phases as you go. So the first phase may be in construction while the second phase is in design and permitting. And we're anticipating obtaining funding for that second phase, right? So, I mean, it takes quite a long time to develop a project, especially to follow all of the state and federal guidelines. There's a ton of paperwork, as Valerie's going to tell you, and it takes a long, long time. They don't act quickly. You can send information into them, and oftentimes, Valerie and I are going through this right now with information that we sent was it June or July, I believe, and we're still waiting for comments from them.
Right.
So it takes a lot of time, and the delays on our end, they're on the state's end and Fed's end in terms of review.
Jill, can you go back to your breakdown of just the projects and then the costs?
Yeah, I kind of thought that might be sort of handy because it's really a matter of
Keep
how do you
going.
want
One
to break
more.
it out?
Well,
Oh,
do
the
one
summary
more.
one? Yep, the one that summarizes it. Yeah,
There we
the
go.
question to you
So-
guys is, how big do you want to go?
Well, so given if we did everything at once, it seems like that's going to be more, it's going to help the water system, but it's going to be more harmful for the town. But we were talking about potentially taking the Rockydale slopeside lines and changing that. So that obviously wouldn't disappear, but it would become something different if you're drilling wells for residents in that area, say. Do you have, it's 2.3 million. Does that go down to 1 million? Is that under 1 million potentially? Like how big a savings? I know that's just sort of some rough, very, very rough numbers. I'm just curious about that.
So that right there, Rockydale and the slope sides, so the slope sides are, I'll go back one slide so that you guys can see it. It's the Bingham residence to East Street, and then the Rockydale line that comes from the tank and serves all of Rockydale. That's your feet. So
Okay.
essentially, if you simply just service them from
From east.
the east heading down,
Yeah.
I don't know, I think it's kind of north by the time you hook around the corner. And then the Bingham residence, there wouldn't need to be an understanding, some type of hydraulic understanding of why that's even there. It could be that it's a second feed line, so that if something happened to the feed line coming up and down Mountain Terrace, that you'd have another way to get water down to your distribution system. It may be redundant feed line from your tank to the main leg of your water system. It may well be that. It's just
Okay.
understanding what its purpose is.
Jill, are we correct in saying, God, maybe Peter can refresh my memory. When we were kids in the 70s, I thought that 10-inch main was put down from the pump house down to East Street through the Bingham's backyard. I remember some digging going on there. I questioned that 1905 there.
Okay,
just-
I mean, I questioned the 1905 on the high school lines, which are on their
Oh,
property.
yeah.
And they're not in the PER, and I think after speaking with several different persons, that they're more like 1968, and they're probably all on the school's property, so we're not touching that right now.
Yeah, I questioned them on your list, the hydrants out in front of the school. And those lines that said 1905, well, that high school, they moved in the fall of 68, so they're all new from 68 on.
Yep, we just weren't
So-
sure if they were from when the airport was there, or if they were from when the school got put in, and I think it became pretty
The only
conclusive.
building
that-
the airport had is the building right by the gate, the white building, and then the old bus garage. That was the hangars.
Ah, well, that's good to know. So that's, and they don't have water there.
And Steve,
So,
a little birdie tells me that we think that you don't want to have any indebtedness when you apply for the loans, but it's actually good to have some indebtedness, because then the government looks at it and says it's a needed project and they need the funds, because if you didn't have any debt, they'd say they can pay that themselves because they don't have any debt. Am I correct in saying that for my little birdie?
They just want to make sure you can pay the loan back. That's all they're really interested in. As long as the community has the resources to pay the loan back, that's all they're really cared about.
And then I've talked with three.
It's not like a
since
commercial
being-
loan.
Okay, since being laid up for 7 or 8 weeks, I had a lot of time to dive into this. And I talked with the operator at Pagens Panton, Brandon and Middlebury, and they're still hoping for some huge funds from the Water Act from the federal government that hasn't come down from any of the states yet. Any word on that? From your
Not that
end?
I'm aware of.
Okay.
The other person that we have in our corner is John from RCAP. We keep asking him to keep us in the loop as federal funds become available, especially grant funds. We want him to be like, hey guys, we've got many, many millions of dollars. Like, how can you use it? Because his job is to make sure that it gets used on real projects that need it. And there's supposedly some other bucket of money, but I have yet to see it.
So what you're saying, Jill, is when he calls us and said, hey, we could get you $2 million, and we say, well, we need 2 years to plan for it. We can pull it off the shelf and it's ready to go, and we can put this out to bid in 60 days and be ready to start digging. Is that
That's
what
right.
you're?
Yes.
Joe, I like what I'm seeing here, really do. And I know I said, like I said, I had a lot of time and I put something together, something like this.
Yeah.
But mine was more even aggressive than yours was doing it every 2 years. But I hear what Steve's saying. From the first time you say, okay, do that street to get a shovel in the ground, you need 3 years to get it done. But I was thinking about doing about 3,000 to 4,000 square feet or lineal feet every 2 years. But I think the board, on what I see up there, is the board's gonna have to give you, besides direction on this, is like the Munsell Avenue to Mountain Health, up that road to out of the Bristol Works, we're thinking about putting a sidewalk in. So that'd be one of the streets that we'd want to put in the water line first. So we're not I would hate to put a new sidewalk up through there in 24 or 25 and then dig it up in 26. I think the board needs to work with our road foreman, and where we're going to have capital improvements in infrastructure, not in the ground, but above the ground. So we don't have egg on our face and we dig it up 2 years after we put in a new sidewalk, we pick it up to put in a water line.
Your concern isn't unnoticed, and we had exactly the same discussions when we were putting this together. So in approaching this, we thought it was best to stick to tonight, at least, to stick to the concept of splitting this
Yep.
up into.
Oh, I agree.
I mean, you guys are the policy board, your job is to set policy and determine how you're going to spend money. And I think what would be better if the board is accepting of this is for the three of us to work on a separate proposal. If you folks agree with the concept, and let us bring you back a much more detailed proposal for the first phase and go through all of the exact things that you're suggesting. Let us work with the road foreman. Let us work with anybody on the board behind the scenes that's interested in doing this and interested in getting into the details of it, and then bring it to the full board and say, look, we vetted this with folks. We've gone through each segment of it. This is what we think is a good approach to this. Street by street by street. And weigh in on the details, because we could go for hours on this stuff. I'm not sure at this stage, at least, that's, you know, a good use of time.
There's
We don't
also
need to
one,
get in the weeds right now.
yeah, there's
Yeah.
one more party too, is that some of these are state roads. You know, it's a matter of talking to V-Trans too about, hey, when are you thinking of paving these roads? Like, what year are they on your list? Because if we're gonna cut into a state road, it'd be sweet to have a paving project come through after.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Okay.
and I'm sure that they've got their 10, 20, 30-year plans. It'd be kind of nice to know where is Main Street a state road or is that a town?
It's
Main Street-
116, but it's all paid for.
It's
pave it.
state, but it's yeah, it was paved two or 3 years ago, 2 years
Yes.
ago.
Before pandemic.
I do
Yeah.
remember that. That's kind of why I put it towards the end. And then
Yeah.
East Street, as you head a little further down. And especially
That-
Rockydale, that one.
That was all paved.
Okay, anyways, that was just the kind of, what still hasn't been paved is really kind of the
Yeah.
the west side. So it's like, let's do that first, so that if we make a mess of the road, it'll look real sweet after the water lines are done.
Jill, is the last question I have, I know we gotta go, but, is there any way, talking about Rockydale, is there any way to determine, we can determine how many
Yeah.
users we got, that's easy. Any determination, how many leaks we got up there, or any?
You'd have
And
to
that
put
hillside
meter,
stuff?
you'd have to put meter pits in.
That would tell me a
understand that.
lot that, boy, we're pretty lucky, we don't have a lot of leak there.
I don't know that you don't. Everything in Bristol
Right.
drains. You got a lot of leakage. I just don't know where it is because I can't see it and I can't hear it because it's you're on this massive deposit of sand and gravel. You drain beautifully.
And Jill, maybe it's worth giving them a 1-minute close about what you're experiencing the last couple of weeks related
Yeah,
to that.
When we had the department discussions last week or the week before, I think it was the week before, I just kind of said, I don't have a lot of super good news. But basically that the last couple months, we're about 2 million gallons up a month from last winter, which we don't have that many new connections and we just can't find. We've been walking the system once a week. We've been looking all over the place for water surfacing somewhere because you see it in the snow, it makes it darker. We walked across country lines. I mean, we're like, where is this? It's like probably 46 gallons a minute is what, if it was in one spot, it's 46 gallons a minute. It's what 2 million gallons a month looks like. My worry is that it's not in one spot and that it's all over the place and it's all the galvanized lines and it's all the CI lines and they're starting to separate because they're just getting that old and that I can't pinpoint it.
I like the
Baker,
concept. I like the concept.
Yeah,
Baker, did you have-
I just got one quick question.
Hold on,
One
Jill.
quick question on Rockydale.
Yeah.
Curious if drilled wells, if that's an option, is that something that the state is going to cost share on, or is that something that's going to be totally borne by us?
Good question, Peter.
It is a good question. I mean, we'd
I
have
mean,
to do
that
it.
might,
Go ahead.
yeah, that might make a difference on the route we go. I mean, rough numbers is somewhere between 600,000 and 900,000 if you drilled them wells and put them pumps and got it into their house. I think Jill told me there's something like 30 services down through there. So,
They're
I mean,
between 30 and 40.
yeah. So somewhere you got to figure completely hooked up. They're probably somewhere between 20 and 30,000 a well at this point.
Mhm,
I'm guessing those are all going to be gravel wells
mhm,
because of the river. So they may not be that bad, but they'll be all casing.
mhm.
So, I mean, if
do we-
it's not a fundable project drilling wells, do we even want that on the table? I mean, is that a question we should ask early on?
I think that's what the alternatives analysis is going to tell you. Right? At the end of the day, that's really what you're after.
I mean, too, we could also look at
That's-
the idea of the supply line, right? Because we're talking about Rockydale and potentially changing that to wells because of the supply line down the mountain versus a supply line coming from along East Street, correct?
Yep, because it doesn't go from there. It just
Right.
stops by the last
Right.
after the last three. There's one over here and two over here, and then there's no water line after that until you get to where it comes down off the tank. And then you've got those new homes. I'm calling them new. That next stretch
Right.
that we call Rockydale. You get the
So
dead zone.
potentially you could change the supply line and maybe get those numbers down in terms of the replacement cost and still have mains water continue to go to Rockydale customers.
Yep, it would be
Okay.
I also think from a practicality standpoint that I believe and I've seen in some spots that the water line is quite shallow buried. You might have to do a little shucking and jiving with the customer services as they might be a little bit high coming into the connection point. But it's mostly shallow as it comes down the mountain and it goes through the ditch to get to the houses.
Okay.
You know.
Well, I say we wrap
Yeah,
this
it
up now.
was,
Obviously, we've
and-
got go on, Peter.
The main reason that's so shallow and it was the feed to the water system and those houses just took the water off on its way by. So water was always moving in that pipe. It ran into the reservoir and whatever if the reservoir was empty, it took it. And if the reservoir was full, it dumped back out and went down the bank into the river. So when the bridge went out, we no longer had water coming from Lincoln, so we eliminated that and just backfed.
Right.
Valerie, do you need a motion to have them continue?
I was just about to ask Steve and Jill if there's a specific action that is needed for them to move forward, or what's the decision that they're looking for from the select board?
I think we just want to know what's your pleasure? How do you want to deal with all these 1905 water lines? Do you want to do it like chunk by chunk? Do you want to do it onesie twosie, or do you want to go all at once?
I like the alternative to the, do every 3 years, have if you did 10,000 square or lineal feet, in about 10, 12, or 13 years, you'll be done, 12 years. I
That's
like that.
alternative 3. Alternative 2 is the Big Bang.
Oh, the Big Bang, no. Alternative 1 was to do nothing then.
Alternative 1 was one every like 300 feet every 77 years, basically. Just one little project every like 5 or 10 years. Alternative 2 was what I call the Big Bang, which is do the whole thing. And alternative 3 is just to split it into these areas. And the first thought was, if we do it geographically, maybe this would be the least amount of disturbance and easier for contractors to do.
I would like to see phase 3 done.
And by the way, they don't have to be these exact geographic areas. This was just a concept that Jill and I came up with, and I think it would be a really good discussion at the next meeting for us to bring forward maybe the first phase, and you folks can say, well, let's delete that street or add that street instead, and have those that level of discussion, I think, at the next meeting or in the future.
Well, so it sounds like one of the other sort of homework items is to just confirm the 1905 lines, since Joe had brought up the case that maybe some of those on the list weren't 1905. So we definitely like to confirm that, especially if it's a large run of pipe that we think is 1905, but really isn't. Or are you definite with these, Jill?
Well, here's the cool part. Hopefully we'll get that grant to do the alternatives, because that means opening every single set of plans and understanding every single water line even more intimately than I already do. And looking at any plan that I can possibly get my hands on. I don't know if there are plans for the super old stuff, or if they're like, dead because they're literally so old. I know everything that was at the state that was in the basement in Waterbury got flooded out and destroyed. So like all those records are gone. So we'll have to see what's in the vault.
Okay. I guess my preference, and Joel has his, my preference, I like the idea of everything at once. I know that it's much more disturbance, and I think we could probably work our way around that. And the reason I like that is because I feel I think these amounts can be shaped a little bit more and perhaps get that 12 million down to something below 10 million, maybe more if possible. My concern with doing it in the staggered years is that every 3 years we're doing bond votes. And I think the complexity of doing that and the potential hazards we could run into by doing that. I worry about that. But I guess my final question I had was, when we're looking at that amount, if we can get that amount down from 12 to something else, do you think, either Jill or Steve, that the DW SRF would actually accept an amount of like 10, or let's say it's 9 million that we need for the entire thing? Is that more manageable, or do you still think that's way out of what they might give us?
Go ahead, Jill.
I think I would be willing to have the discussion with Amy.
Yeah.
And say, Amy, here's the situation. We have 33,000 linear feet of 1905 water line that are literally increasing our water loss well above 55%, and we're just increasing year over year. And it's kind of getting to a point where it's getting really hard to justify and to manage. Is there room in the program to justify a project of this size, given that it may take several contractors, and that it may require a couple phases, but to get it into the program and get it funded? Or are we likely to get denied and not as high on the priority list? Because the priority list is all about points. And the more points we have, the higher up we are on the list. And if they look at us and say, you have more points than other water systems, and they're on our side, we could get a lot of the money in any one given grant year. Design isn't the expensive part, construction is.
Right. And typically, the state has approached this from the perspective of they like to sprinkle the money around the state, right? They don't like to give any one municipality a whole lot of, I'm just telling you traditionally, and I understand that perspective.
Yeah.
So
Well,
I agree with Ian in that, I mean, I'd love to do it all at once and cut the ties, and get it done and over with, stop the pain. Realistically, I don't think that'll work. I don't think the people paying the bill are going to be able to swallow that. I mean, you have this set in like 3 or 4 or 5 sections. What if we do it in half those sections? Rather than a 2 million, you get a 4 million or whatever. I mean, I just like do the center and the east or the west and the I don't know, but I'm just thinking, can we combine them to have a couple less?
Yeah.
So when we were looking at a figure of 10,000 lineal feet a year, or maybe a contract is a better term, we were looking at over a single or maybe 2 construction years. And part of the problem is, I think, just from a simple chaos perspective, if you do this all at one time, you're essentially setting a bomb off in the middle. I don't mean it physically, but you need to understand, you're going to shut the transportation system down for the great majority of the village for probably 2 years at a minimum. And I think you need to ask yourselves, and that's a great part of this discussion. I think this is really from a policy perspective, what you guys need to help us sort out. Is that something, number one, the businesses and residents would put up with? And there is going to be, listen, I managed the downtown Winooski project when we redid it. It took an enormous amount of planning to be able to do that in years of time, in an effort not to shut down and close every single business in the community, because that's really what we were facing. And we still lost 80% of them. So, I mean, I think there needs to be some practical reality in the discussion about how you go about this. And I'm not sure, from a practical standpoint, in a small community, shutting down the great majority of the transportation in the village area for 2 years straight is practical. I'm just being honest.
Yeah. No, I agree. And we saw what happened in Middlebury with the railway line. and the damage that did. I mean, it had to be done, just like this has to be done. And so, but now, now they're rebuilding at a very, very slow pace. But I agree. I think you're right. I mean, and part of my fear is that I don't want that at all. And so I guess it's up to us to really explain and to be clear to the residents, especially in the former village area, of what this is going to mean by staggering this into potentially, 6 different projects or 5 different projects, and the complexities of doing the bond vote for each and what that means. I guess another worry I had is that I think Joel brought this up in terms of, let's say we do the first one and then we don't get the funding for the second one or the third one. And so by doing it all at once, maybe you could get it if you could get that price in and potentially other grants. But I guess it's something we just have to explore as we get deeper into this.
Yeah, I feel like the part that I have coded blue as the center, that's literally the epicenter. That's where you're gonna have that Middlebury feel. Like you're gonna be right around where all those businesses are. And it was just paved and it did just go through, 2-3 years ago.
Yep.
And it was managed very well compared to what it could have been. So,
but it's better to do that at one time than piecemeal it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay.
I mean,
all right. Well, this has been great.
Last thing, Ian, is Peter,
Sure.
How many years we've been wanting to do Pine Street? Bill Bryant told Peter Bouvier, the road foreman, don't pave that road yet. We're gonna put a water line in. And that was 15 years ago. So if we approve this by the end of June, in 15 years, we'd have all the streets done, and we still haven't gotten one done yet.
We're getting there.
We're getting there, but I think we're in a much, we're in a much better position and a much better understanding of what's going.
That's why, I'd love 12 million, do it all over a 3-year period, but yeah.
Well,
I don't want to be sitting here if we dig the whole town up and do it all at once. I'm sorry.
Me neither.
Me either.
I remember what we went through when we did North Spring and up to Mountain Street School, and then you all know what we went through when we did West Street. And if we happen to have a year like that and had a contractor that wasn't on top of it, what kind of backlash was there. Can you only imagine if we had the whole town dug up?
We can also do alternate 1, 77 years, and you and Joel will still be on the board then, so you'll be able to. All right. Well, thank Jill and Steve. Thank you very much for working on this.
Yes, very nice presentation.
Thank you.
Thank you.
If there aren't any more questions, I'd love to move on to some more waterline discussion.
This one should be pretty quick.
Let's hope so. No, this has been great. So this is consider item 2 of our regular business. Consider authorization to submit the DWSRF priority list application for Pine Street waterline replacement and the application for construction loan funds.
I was not sure if the select board had already previously authorized these submissions, but just to be safe, and since it dovetails so well with the previous agenda item, this is to make sure that the select board support is absolutely clear and authorization is absolutely clear to submit the priority list application and the construction loan application.
So moved.
So moved.
So moved.
I believe we already did it, but I agree. So moved.
So nice, we did it twice. Okay. So do you want a motion on that, or do you believe us that we've already made a motion on this?
No, I think you got 3 motions. You better pick one and we'll move with it. I'll second
Pick
one of
one
the
or
2.
choose somebody to second.
Okay, great. Sharon can
I
make
think
that
I'm the
up.
only one that didn't make a motion, so I'll second it.
There we go. All right. Any further discussion on this? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye. Raise your hand. Aye.
Aye.
All those against, nay. Motion carries. Terrific.
Excellent. Thank you. And thank you so much to Steve and Jill for all the work that went into this to get us to this point.
I agree. Thank you. All right, let us continue. I gotta get my files up here. Okay. Item number 3, consider next steps for recommended tree removals at the Varney Cemetery on Hard Scrabble Road.
So online is an email from tree warden John Swepston with his assessment of the trees at the cemetery. And long and short is he recommends that the larger, older trees be removed, pretty much.
All of them.
All of
Yeah.
them.
Yeah, he says, I think all sizable trees in and around the cemetery should be removed.
Mhm.
And he says, I don't think he's ever made this suggestion in his professional career as an arborist, but he thinks all sizable trees should be removed.
So that said, we have the fence that we want to do on the front. Do we just bite
Yeah.
the bullet and take them all?
On the
That's what I
front,
was
When we
saying.
looked at it,
Yeah.
we thought there were a few trees there that were healthy enough to stay, but given we're gonna, if we do it,
Yeah.
we're gonna make a disaster area. Do we take it all and then we can just put the fence in where we want to put it?
That's what I would
think
say.
Yeah.
Might as well do it. You're gonna do it right.
I
Yeah, I
think
think that makes the most sense.
have John mark the trees that he wants gone. And especially just tell him, we want all the front, so we put a new fence on the front, but if he's gonna have little small ones on around the side and the back, then don't mark those and send somebody to taking them.
Yeah.
That
He
excavator
mentioned,
across the road there.
yeah. In his email, he says this is going to be a costly endeavor. Town could perhaps pay to remove trees in stages. He says he can walk the cemetery again and come up with estimated pricing. He says he wouldn't do the work, but he would work on the prices and look at what was fair for removals.
So we
Joel, is
currently
that a
have,
project that,
Road closure.
sorry, is that a project that the week school could do? I'd say week school because it's, what is it, Northland?
Job Corps?
Yeah,
We could look into
and
it.
it's not in the road and.
Right. Maybe the ones on the front, they wouldn't do. You might, that excavator across the road up in the pit, could grab those in the front, but around the side. And in the back where they have they don't like to get in, as you know, the kids to do electrical lines and stuff. That's why they wouldn't do that one.
There's no electrical lines there.
Right, so yeah, you could do those probably. I can make a couple of phone calls.
Okay. All right, that'll be good. Who was that again?
Northland Job Corps, I see, Forestry Division, that they
Okay.
have kids go out and cut trees and learn how to do that.
Great.
John has a question. Dean.
Okay, that sounds like a good opportunity for that.
Ian, John
Do we
has-
want John to sort of walk the cemetery again and estimate pricing, or do we want to reach out with Joel's suggestion first and Peter's suggestion?
Maybe to save John his time, hold up until I get an answer from them. If they say, no, we don't do that anymore, or whatever.
Okay.
Yeah, we might
right,
as well be
yeah.
scared before we.
Right.
Quick question.
Okay. John Moyers, yes?
If I'm not mistaken, having photographed that cemetery quite a few times over the years, beautiful as it is, but I'm not disputing the tree thing, but I think it's a lot of black locust out there, which I don't know if that's valuable wood, but it has a lot of BTUs in it, nothing else. And I don't know if there's a firewood bank or something like that we could feed with that kind of stuff or some other purpose. That's all. I'll throw that out there. Plus, I'm going to hurry up and get some more pictures out there.
I think what I would do is ask the Job Corps if you could do it. Number one, if they say yeah, is to block it up in such a length that it's manageable and put it side of the road and put a free sign on it. Anybody who wants to come take it, free to a good home.
Yeah,
There's
we'll have to
something
get
in
it out of
Moncton
there
as well.
because we're gonna. We
gotta
and
do
we
those
have
fields.
permission to be on. We have permission to be on Hill's property as long as there's not crops there.
Yeah, we gotta do that before the end of April, right? Bigger middle, first part of May. They're gonna be putting crops in there by the 1st of May or sometime in the month of May, for sure. I'll reach out to the Job Corps tomorrow then. I know the
Okay.
person out there.
Yeah, and I like John's suggestion of the wood bank. I know that I don't think Bristol has one. Some of the surrounding towns do have that.
Moncton
That's
does.
potentially something that maybe the Energy Committee might want to look into. I know it's been sort of discussed in the past.
Somebody had reached out to us also who was a town resident who asked if they could have some of that wood as well, so.
Okay.
I believe Willow
Okay.
Well used to operate a wood bank, but I don't know now.
I know
Okay.
Moncton has one too, but.
Okay.
We
Yeah,
had
as long as it
had
goes-
one for a while, but I don't think it's been used in quite a while.
Okay.
That
Was
wood is.
Cecil in charge of that? Or was there somebody else speaker?
What's
There was
that?
somebody who did it. I don't remember who it was
Cecil.
now.
Okay.
That
Yeah,
wood
I
is
don't
hard
either.
to split, but it's great. I mean, it's the best firewood, so.
Okay. All right. Thanks. So Joe, you'll do that. Thank you very much.
Yeah,
All right. Any other discussion on the cemetery?
Are there any other organizations that might, if it's not the Job Corps, it's some other organization, like maybe the Eagle Scout project of some sort? Because the tree removal is one part, but then there's also the other kind of cleanup of the cemetery and resetting some of the stones and some of the other things that need to be done. So maybe this is a multi-phased project.
I think it would have to be given the
Yeah, the
complexity.
trees
of it.
first, yeah.
And,
Right.
and can I ask another
Yeah.
quick question?
Sure, John.
You know that there's a person buried out there, a man whose name I forget offhand, but there's at least 3 of his subsequent wives are also buried with him. 3 or 4 possibly. And I don't know does anybody know who that is? I have a photograph of it. I don't know the name off the top of my head. I could find it, but I believe, I just want to check that because I know we have some history buffs here, but there's a man out there and I believe there's 3 or 4 of his subsequent, all of his wives are also buried there. There's a story there. Anyway, I just wonder if anybody knows it.
See a black widow?
If you want, I'll while the meeting's going on, I'll go get a picture. I have it, and if you zoom in, I'll email it to you guys. If you zoom in on it, you can see his stone and all of their stones. I believe it's 3 or 4 subsequent wives, and it's
Interesting.
very interesting. I'm just dying to know the story. Thank you.
All right. So let's move on from that.
Wait a
And
minute, Val, do
Go.
you need anything for the Vermont Old Cemetery Association grant?
But if folks wanted to explore that, it's not a lot of money and it's really more appropriate if there's a civic group or scouts or some other kind of volunteer effort going on. And maybe that's the next phase
Right.
of the cleanup part.
Okay.
all right. Let's move on. Item 4, consider authorization to proceed with permit applications to locate bus shelters on 4 private properties. Carmelo, Shaw's, Walgreens, Stony Hill Business Park, Tom and Carol Wells property on Park Place, and in the vicinity of the Bristol Family Center on Lovers Lane. So, you're muted, Val.
Yep, thanks. As I noted in my report, we were initially contacted by Tri-Valley Transit, who acquired these shelters through a combination of partnerships with AARP and the Yestermorrow Design School and B-Trans. And they approached the town because ordinarily bus shelters are along the roadways. And that's the domain of the select board in the town. But it turns out that a lot of these, or it appears as though the optimum locations for these shelters are actually on private property. So Chris Purley has affirmed that the structures on private property definitely need a zoning permit of some sort. And initially, when Ian and I were talking about this, we were thinking, oh, the town needed to apply. But as I thought about it more, that the town's role right now, it appears to be facilitating this, which is fine. But I think for the zoning permit process, it would really need to be the Tri-Valley Transit who would own the shelters and the property owners who are agreeing to allow them to be on their properties.
Will allow me to present this presentation I made.
I'm going to have to step away for a moment. I'll be back.
Sure. So this came through as Val was stepping away to have medical leave. And so I took it over. I reached out to Tri-Valley Transit and then started to have discussions with property owners. So as Val said, it's through Vermont Agency of Transportation, AARP, and the Yes Tomorrow Design Build School. They said that there were 3 pre-built shelters available, and they were going to be awarded to communities on a first come, first served basis. So the in terms of logistics, you've got they said that it would they would fund to have the structures sent to us and delivered to us from Yes Tomorrow. TDT would own the structures. They'd be responsible for the liability and with the associated use of the structures. And the town would be asked to have site prepared and take care of snow removal and landscaping if it's on in areas that we would normally do that. One of the stipulations of this project and these shelters is that it must be wheelchair accessible by a sidewalk. And you can see in the illustration here that they're up higher. These would need to be sunk into the ground to be able to be wheelchair accessible. I asked about the potential of doing a ramp, and while I think that is allowed, it doesn't seem like VTrans prefers that method. So shelter designs, there are 3 shelter designs. I've sort of dubbed them the art shelter, the living roof shelter, and the bike shelter. They're all about 14 to 16 feet wide, about 8 feet deep, about 10 feet high in their various designs. So you've got the bike one. This is an incomplete. It actually will have siding in the front, similar to what you see in the back. Large enough where you could come in on the right-hand side there, put bikes in, there'll be seating inside. You can actually see that in these designs here. Oops, sorry, there. So bikeability there, and you'd be able to wait in the shelter here. And then you have the living roof, which is sort of a more open structure, has a membrane on the roof. So if we wanted to plant a living roof, grass, get in, we could do that. And then the art shelter is sort of slightly more enclosed, but with artistic sort of things going on, shelving and seating, things like that. So looking at the TDT stops in Bristol, the majority, there's a good amount right in downtown. We have one at Shaw's, we have one on the town green. We also have one over at the high school. Bristol Works is a fairly new one. And then we have a couple down on Lovers Lane at the Bristol Family Center, the Woodland Drive. And then it looks like another one, the Hewitt Road, Lovers Lane right there. So I reached out and I wanted to know what the ridership was and what the highest stops were to sort of figure out where we might want to put these in. So here are the details of that. So highest is Town Green. And that stop is right by the, I want to get this church right. It's the Baptist church. So that's where that stop is. And usually people stand on the steps of the church as they wait. So that has the highest ridership. Red Cedar School outside of town on Hardscrabble has the next. And then we have Shaw's, Woodland Drive, Family Center. Bristol Works is lower just because it's one of the newest stops. So knowing those numbers, we sort of looked and tried to determine where we might want to put the shelters. So obvious one, given the highest ridership, is the Bristol Town Green. It's by the Baptist church right here. Here's the location. The stop is actually at the church. We're looking at this location here. The initial idea was, could we put it somewhere in this vicinity? I spoke with representatives from the Baptist church who have declined to have the structure on their property. They feel that the entrance to the church provides enough of shelter for people who use the bus, and they would prefer not to see the shelter on their property, which is fine. If we're looking at this larger picture here, so that's church property. The other side is Tom and Carol Wells. They own the old high school and that property, and essentially their property line is just at the back with the red brick building. It's just on the other side of that, and then it sort of moves a little bit and just comes to the right side of the Bell display box, and so it sort of hugs in. Talking to Tom, I Zoomed with him and spoke to him about this when I learned that the Baptist church would prefer not to have the structure on their site. I asked Tom, is there still potential to have it on his property? and he entertained the idea of actually removing the bell house structure, and having the shelter there in its place, and maybe the bell structure box or little building can go over to somewhere else in town. I was going to reach out to Reg at the Historical Society to see what he thought, but they were definitely thought that that would be a good place. It allows to then only have one structure there in front of the old high school instead of another one maybe to the left of it. So I thought that was very positive. The next location that we looked at, we thought would be a positive one was obviously Shaw's. The stop itself is right outside the Shaw's door. There isn't anywhere. Go on,
Can I
Joe.
just interrupt for a minute? Bruce had a
Yeah,
question.
sure.
Will we lose any parking spaces on the one by the Baptist church?
I don't think so. The idea, and it's something that we still need to confirm with the TVT, is that given that the stop is right next to the church, and if we put a structure here, would the bus stop right in front of this power pole to pick people up? I don't think we would need to lose any parking, because I think you could stand in the shelter and then walk to the bus as it parked, 10 feet away from the shelter. But I want to check with TVT just to make sure, because there are at least two of these have the potential for moving the actual stop further down just to accommodate where shelters might be.
And did we have a talk before Christmas, sometime in November, about, we had this long discussion about this long crosswalk going diagonal?
Yes.
And going straight across right behind that car right now, presently?
Yes. And part of that discussion was the ability to actually put in a proper crosswalk, and whether we had sight lines and things like that. I know it was only one member of the community that had brought that to our attention, and we and the Bristol Police Department sort of backed up some of the information that they had given us. But I think we left it where I think it was just the complexity of putting a crosswalk in and how to get across safely and not interrupt other sight lines.
And then get down the sidewalk. Okay, thank you.
Sure. So that was that location. Next one was Shaw's. So it's right outside of Shaw's. There is no room to put a structure there. So talking to Parmelo, my thoughts were to put it by the Walgreens building in the location that you see right here with the bollards. This, I guess, used to be the entrance, or used to be their service entrance or trucking entrance until it got moved to the other side of the building. So it seems like this area isn't being used. It looks pretty bad anyway. Parmelo seemed very open to having the structure there, potentially having it dug down, and then also repaving the area. And they would take care of that, it seems, because they need to do that anyway. So that could work to our advantage. And then the third location that we thought of was a new location at the Firehouse Apartments. So I met on site with the Evernorth as well as Kevin Harper, and sort of discussed where the location of this shelter might go. The gist of that conversation was that the Evernorth suggested that there was a lot of complexity if the shelter was situated on their property. Because of the amount of investors, it would have to be signed off by all of them to be able to allow it to be on there. And so it seems like working with Kevin, whose property is just to the right of the structures and the fencing that you see here as part of the Stony Hill Business Park, it would be easier to have Kevin and David give approval to have the shelter there. So essentially where you see this new path for the Bristol Trail Network, the shelter could be situated somewhere around here and be easily accessed by the sidewalk, and also a turnaround for that area, since it's it's all obviously an older picture, but there's now turnarounds here in the parking lot. So it seemed like Kevin was amenable to this. The one thing that Kevin mentioned was just the type of structure and what it looks like, and whether how that would fit in with the business park, but that could be a discussion we have at a later date. So those three property owners were very amenable to having shelters there, which is positive. We also we mentioned in the beginning, Val mentioned that the potential to have it at an existing location. So we have the Bristol Family Center and Lovers Lane, potential to have a shelter there. or further down on Woodland Drive. And I haven't reached out to property owners yet because I was initially just exploring Park Place and Shaw's, Prince Lane, and then Firehouse Drive. So as I said, Wells Mountain LLC owns the Park Place, Parmelo Real Estate handles Prince Lane, and Firehouse Drive is the Stony Hill Properties. So
Ian, have you, excuse me, Ian,
Go on.
have you been down to
Sure.
Woodland Apartments and looked at that
No,
site?
I have
'Cause
not.
believe there, the last time I drove school bus down there years ago, there is a bus stop for the
Okay.
kids to wait for the bus, for the school bus.
Oh, okay.
So maybe that could be incorporated in somehow.
Okay. Oh, that's a good idea. Yeah, and I'm definitely, and the reason I was hesitant on the third choice, the Firehouse, that suggestion had been made, and I think it's a good one. I was trying to see if would TVT prefer to see the shelter go to an already established stop versus creating a new one, because we know that ridership initially for the first few years will probably be much lower, and could another stop take advantage of the shelter, especially in rain, things like that, and worse weather conditions. So I'm definitely open to sort of maybe using the bike one, which is sort of larger, to potentially go to another stop. I did a couple quick mock-ups just at Park Place and at the Walgreens location. So Tom was interested in the art one here. He felt that structure, he liked the design of that structure versus the other one, the living roof. So I just did a quick mock-up of what that could look like, just sort of situated there. And then this is potentially what the living roof one could look like, sort of sunk into the ground and located at Walgreens. And this would obviously be, the paving would be improved there.
Can I ask a question?
You
I mean,
can
the
ask a
purpose
question.
of these is for kind of shelter. I'm looking at this one and going, what kind of shelter are you getting from that? I mean, other than maybe if the rain comes,
Yeah.
or the snow comes straight down, you might not get wet, but I mean,
Yeah.
it's just like, yeah, I don't know how much shelter that's giving you.
Yes, I agree. It's, obviously they're very non-traditional bus shelters. Most shelters are fairly nondescript looking, but they do offer at least, a fairly decent amount of shelter from top and from sides. These are much more open. There is roof shelter, so if it's raining, it's going to give you that shelter. But yes, I agree.
I mean,
Yes.
are you gonna get like, is the offer at this point one of each type, or you get to choose, like, are they
No,
all bike,
I
are they
asked
all?
them about that, and they said they have these three, and if Bristol wants them, Bristol can have them. And so it's sort of the town working with them to help put these in. If we choose not to support any of these because we feel that maybe the shelter aspect doesn't really shelter people, we could choose not to, and then they would offer it, they would go to another town. And I'm happy to do that as well. I don't want to, the town's position, it's obviously working, it's a public-private sort of relationship that we're working on, and the permitting will be for the property owner. I will say that one of the higher choices for the ARPA committee was bus shelters. And so it just happened to be at the same time that we were offered 3 bus shelters potentially for Bristol. And so that's why I sort of took this project on, because it was like, oh, it's a lot of people have requested this. So let's sort of run with this and see what we can do, and let's see what we can get. And, the cost would be fairly minimal, which is nice, because we're not starting from scratch. But they are definitely more contemporary in terms of their design. But I do think that they're interesting, fun things to have, and they do shelter people somewhat.
Yeah, I mean, I don't mind. I don't
Yeah.
mind the look of them. I'm just thinking, like,
Yeah.
they really don't offer much for shelter to me. But then
Yeah.
you said we have to maintain like snow removal, landscaping, and it's like, we don't really
Well,
normally
so-
do that here.
No. So TVT suggested that just because it was sort of like a public area, like we would do on the
Yeah.
park. For this
Okay.
particular location, speaking with the Parmelo folks, they would take care of snow removal just because it's part of the snow removal that they would do normally in
Yeah.
that area. I think at Firehouse Drive, it being where it is, we would probably do a little bit of cleaning on that sidewalk anyway, so we would make sure it's accessible. And the same with Park Place, we would just make sure that the sidewalk there is accessible and it could be used.
Mhm.
But I do think it's fairly minimal in terms of the upkeep of those, and the liability on these, if it gets damaged, that's on TVT, so that's not on us.
Mhm. So I
Um,
mean, the initial cost though is really the site prep and
Correct.
are we
Yeah.
installing them or did they come and install them?
We would install them. They would be delivered to us, and it would be our responsibility and our cost to install them. They don't need to be installed on concrete pads,
Mhm.
they've said.
Yeah.
But obviously, each of these locations, you would need to dig down a fairly decent amount and probably line with stone or whatever to make it fairly a decent area for it to sit on, and then could be lowered in place and then be hopefully fairly easily accessed without bumps and things like that. So again, the next steps would be obviously the permitting process for Prince Lane and Stony Hill, Act 250 compliance, talking to Parmelo and the gentleman there who sort of manages Parmelo's properties. He didn't think that revisiting the Act 250 would be anything unusual or anything difficult, to just make sure that we could put that structure there. And so I'm assuming the same thing would happen at the Stony Hill locations. And then our final area would be just sort of working on the costs for the site prep and the installation at these 3 locations, and then hopefully applying ARPA funding for that. And there you go.
Thank you, Ian, for that presentation. That was very nicely prepared.
Sure.
It occurred to me a moment ago, the permitting fees, we need to remember that there's going to be that cost also, that the property owners really shouldn't be expected to cover, since this is a private public thing.
Yeah. So I guess I'm interested in board members' thoughts. Do we want to support this and move ahead with this and work on the permitting? What are people's thoughts?
I kind of like the design. I think that, like the one that Tom fits kind of fits with the play structure on the park.
Oh yeah.
And I think that, what's that?
No, I think it's great. I agree with you.
And then the other 2, I think anything to break up the side of that big long building at Pomelo's isn't going to hurt.
Yeah.
A little nervous about burying them, but as long as they were set on stone, and drainage would be an issue because it's all gravel.
Okay, great.
I guess, Tom's, I'd like to see, if you want to go back to that one, I really don't want to see the bell gone or moved.
Okay.
But maybe it could be incorporated instead of that, when you get back to that picture of that one. No, put the picture with the
Oh,
shelters.
yeah, my mock-up. Yeah, hang on one sec. There you go.
Instead of those shelving in the middle, maybe that could be something where the bell could sit in there with the same description of it, that this was the old high school location. Incorporate it with it.
Okay.
And then the one that Michelle and I couldn't agree with her. There isn't a lot of shelter that wanted there. I think it'd be a lot more shelter if you cut that down about 2 feet and lower the roof.
Yeah.
Because does it need to be? It looks to be about 9-10 feet high there.
Well, that's
It
the
is,
living
yeah.
roof. That's the living
Yeah.
roof, Joel. So that's probably why it's up that high. But even if they put the slats on the side, at least it would block the north
Yeah.
wind.
Yeah.
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 So.
I mean, I guess my
And then I
question is,
think-
are they, I'm sorry, Joel, go ahead.
Then the third one is, I think we ought to wait and see how Firehouse Drive develops. It
Okay.
may want to be it down towards, if you have a manufacturing building down towards the end where you got 40 employees or 100 employees coming in and they're riding the bus, you may want it down there further than you do next to the apartments. I'm just saying.
Yeah.
I kind of let that play out first.
Okay. Yeah, and there definitely was with the bike one, which was more of a, if we go back, where is that? There. It isn't completed, but there's showing this to Kevin, he wasn't super excited about this design, and was concerned how that might fit in. So I think we might, it might be that we want to investigate one of the other stops to sort of potentially put this in, maybe at the Bristol Family Center if they're interested in that, or at the Woodland Drive, since those numbers are fairly high. And if it can support an already established stop, I'm happy to sort of do a little bit of research and talk to the property owners about that. And maybe the bike one at one of those locations would be more useful than it would be potentially at Firehouse Drive. But I do agree, Joe. I think you're right. We try to split the difference in terms of where it was located by the apartments and then the potential new buildings that might be down there. But I think you're right. I think it's probably better to wait to see what happens in that area before putting something in there.
Yeah.
Darla.
Ian, can you answer just the question, and maybe I missed it? Are these built already and this is what we have to choose from?
Yes.
I think so.
Okay.
Yeah, and that's not to say that we might not want to alter them or something, or can work with
Okay.
Yestermar to say, hey, we love these shelters, but would it be possible to get a bit more shelter with these shelters?
Right.
Especially the living roof one.
Yeah, that's
so
exactly
we
what I
might-
was thinking.
We might be able to talk to them about that, or potentially, since we do have ARPA funding available, and this is one of those projects that was supported by the town and by the community, to maybe add a little bit more shelter ourselves to that, hire a contractor to do that, of which there are many around this area.
Mm-hmm. Thank you.
Okay. So Val, in terms of the permitting, if we have approval at this level, what would be the next stage?
Well, we'll work with Chris to prepare applications that would include the site plans. The property owners would need to sign off on them along with the Tri-Valley Transit, and all agreeing to be co-applicants. I guess the town's role would just be facilitator at this point and covering some of those expenses.
Okay. All right.
Ian,
John.
just an observation that whichever of those designs you may choose, they're going to dump water in a particular place. And
right.
So when you plan for installation, you're going to need to consciously plan about where that water's landing, how you're going to deal with it. You don't want it dripping back underneath and across the waiting area, for example, or
right.
whatever. But
okay. Yeah, I think probably at the Walgreens is probably the most, because of the angled roof, that particular design, and where that might go. I think with Tom's property, it goes directly back onto grass, which is nice, and so hopefully will soak in, and then potentially the other locations would also be able to remediate that.
And those two in the downtown area, Shaw's and the Green, would have to go through the design review board.
Right.
We'd have to double check. I guess it's considered a structure. So yeah.
Chris did confirm that they would need to go through.
Okay, great. Yep. Okay. I'm happy if the board, it sounds like the board's okay with this and wants to proceed. I'm happy to continue working on it. It's been enjoyable so far. And so I'm happy to continue to do that and look at, since we're not too certain about Firehouse Drive at the moment, just because it's being built as we talk. I'm happy to look at another couple other locations just to see how that might work out.
And I'd like to, I don't want to look a gift horse in the mouth for getting them free, but sometimes free isn't the best. And we all got questions about how they look, is see what else is out there. I see the ones, not so much thrilled about the ones up by, up through Williston, past the, down through there with the 3-sided glass or 4-sided glass with 2 entrances, but that might be something, we say, well, we're gonna bite the bullet and spend a little more and buy some instead of getting something for free that they're free. Would we build that I guess we all gotta ask the question, if we had to pay for it, would we have one built like that? I guess the answer would probably no.
Right. We would probably choose a more traditional approach to bus shelters.
Right.
Yeah. And I hope that they're built to a standard that they would last a good amount of time. Obviously, if you're with other materials other than wood, most shelters, like you said, are glass and metal. They potentially have a higher longevity.
And there
And
might be grants out there from the V-Trans. There might be a grant for transportation grant to
Right.
put bus shelters in.
And may I
Yeah.
make another observation that's
Sure.
relevant to this comment, to Joel's comment? To me, they look lightly built. And if I'm not mistaken, they're based on 4x4s primarily. And I can tell you that's not enough for a thing like that in public. I wouldn't build that on my own property. I'd go up a dimension, you know, maybe the same design or something. But also one of the designs is very much a parachute type roof. And where I sit on the bank here, this may not be where you're thinking of putting them, but there's a lot of upwelling winds that want to lift a roof. And so that may be a factor in the decision of a design that you may choose to think about that. And especially if they're lightly built, like that parachuting is a really powerful thing. And just be wary of that, I would say.
yeah, I'd hate to put these in and then discover in 6 months time that we've had problems with them already because of the design, because of their particular design. So that's definitely something we can look at. And I think, given that this was a highly supported project for the ARPA committee, we would be able to use ARPA funds obviously for this. These would be given to us free, which obviously saves the town money. But if it's something that the public really wants, and you can see how much of the usage that we get for these, I'm definitely willing to sort of investigate other options for bus shelters. Maybe, it'll be a more traditional approach, but that might give us better longevity, for the town.
Ian, do you know if the Bicycle Pedestrian Committee has turned any attention to bus shelters?
Not yet. I've mentioned the project to them, but they haven't had it on their agenda because I mentioned that I had been working on it. But I can definitely talk to them about that, and perhaps they can do some of that research. Okay. I think we can still move forward, even given the questioning tonight. I think each property owner, at least the 3 that I've spoken to, are very interested in having bus shelters there, whether they be these designs or something else. So I do think we can continue with the permitting process. And at the same time that's happening and being put together, I'm happy to do some more research on alternatives for this project. So I'd entertain a motion for me to continue to do that.
Ian,
bet
Elizabeth
people-
Blair has something to say.
Oh, sure.
Yeah, I'd like to, being on the ARPA committee and having, talked about bus stops, some of those don't look like they would hold very many people. So if it's raining and it holds 4 people and you've got, 15 people that are getting wet, I don't think that's such a good idea. And also, if these are free, it may be because they don't sell because they got a lot of problems. And I think if you build something that has a lot of problems, that doesn't solve many problems, you're going to have a lot of mad people in the community.
Yeah, no, I totally hear you, Betsy, and I agree. I mean, it's not a question if these were built in a way and didn't sell. It's just because it's the particular design school that they come from. It's sort of working on unique designs, and it's just a different way of approaching these kind of structures.
But how many people fit into these different structures?
I don't know. I've only seen the schematics and the pictures. I can only sort of guesstimate of how many might be in there. It's probably, let's see. I mean, the bike one can hold quite a few people, but the others, I mean, the living roof, where there's not a lot of protection each side, maybe 6 or 7 people.
And that looks like that would work. That would work on the beach or something, where you're just trying to
Right.
keep the sun off.
Yes.
Well, Ian, I think a question ought to be posed to Tri-Valley is, what's your average pickup on a stop? I mean,
Yeah,
that says
that's true.
1,900, but that's over a year. You
Oh,
know,
yeah.
they say, well,
I did the
our
math.
average is two people on it per stop or three.
Yeah.
It's five per day on average, based on 365 days a year, so.
Okay.
That's,
All right.
Well, I can tell you the
yeah,
other
but
day.
they stop 4 times a day, John, too.
Yeah.
They stop
I was
4 or
gonna
5
say, the
times
other
a
day they were I saw them pick up people at the church, Baptist church, and there were a bunch of kids. There was probably 8 people that got on the bus at that morning at that time.
Okay.
Yeah, they
All
ride
right.
there to Mount Abe. Yeah.
Yeah, that's right. Okay. Well, yeah, I'm happy to, as I said, I'm happy to continue this and sort of look at some alternatives, you know, a more traditional approach, and continue and then update you as I work on that. So if someone wants to make a motion just for the permitting, we can start that process going, and then I can bring this back to the select board in the next meeting or following meeting with some of my updates.
So you want a motion to have permission to move forward with the permitting process on the 3 private property owners? Or just the permitting process in general?
I think let's just do permitting process in general, if that's okay, just because I want to approach the Woodland Drive and then the Bristol Family Center as potential locations, just because of the ridership numbers there.
Okay, I'll make that motion.
Okay,
I'll second.
thank you. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye, raise your hand.
John, wait a minute, I was on muted. So this doesn't commit us to those 3 structures?
No.
Just keep them, okay, then I will. vote
Yeah,
yes.
it would just be the permitting process to sort of work with the property owners to be able to have a bus shelter. I've shown those designs to the property owners. Obviously, you know, as I mentioned, Kevin Harper was a little hesitant given the design. So what I would do is we would start the permitting process. I would research other types of bus shelters, probably more traditional ones that are used in the community. And then I would go back to the property owners as we began the permitting process and revisit the designs and see if they were amenable to that. But I think the questions that everyone has raised tonight are very good questions that we needed to consider before accepting something. Like you said, even though this is a free opportunity, it's not necessarily the best opportunity for Bristol in terms of shelters.
But we also need to check in with Tri-Valley Transit because I think they're under some time pressure to move these things somewhere. So if we're not ready, then they might need to look for other communities to have them.
Yeah, I mean, I'm happy to talk to them and just say, you know, we've had a presentation about this at the select board level, and there was some hesitation from and discussion about this in terms of these particular structures and what they might offer as a structure for the community, and maybe that's the way to go. Or maybe you have another suggestion, Val? I don't want to turn them down, but also too, I want to respond to the questions that were raised this evening.
And maybe the timeline works for them, but we should be sensitive to what their timeline is.
Okay. Okay.
It may not be that they have to actually go into places we picked. They could end up going someplace on a different stop.
True. Yeah.
You know, that's not saying that we don't put them in the places you pick, but just we don't put those there.
Right. That's true. Okay. All right. Any other discussion on this before we vote? All right, hearing none. All those in favor say aye. Raise your hand.
Aye.
All those against, nay. Motion carries. Terrific. Thanks. Yeah, this is just to start the permitting. Nothing is locked in. It's just to sort of get this going, and then I will come back with updates when I have them. Terrific. Thank you, everyone. Okay, let's move on. Page 56. Item 5, continued review of updates and revisions to the revolving loan fund guidelines and applications documents. Okay, so I've been working on these, as I mentioned, as I would last meeting. And I sent them around for folks to review. I sent PDFs of the updated forms and papers that I'd done, as well as live links. Let's take a look here. Most of the stuff I updated from our previous discussion on these. Let me see if I can get one of these open here. Let's do this one.
I didn't have as much time as I had hoped to be able to look through the different documents
Okay.
before tonight. Some,
Not
but
a
not
problem.
everything.
All right. Let me just.
And I believe Anthony also intended to spend some time with them, but I don't think he had a chance before tonight.
Okay. That's fine. Yeah, we can continue this. I just wanted to sort of show folks what I'd worked on. Okay. Hang on one sec. What I'll do is I'm just going to open up the live version and then share that if I can. Huh. Did you, Val, have you, where they were sitting in your office, did you move the documents by any chance?
No, I used the live links
Huh,
that you
okay.
in the email. And I wrote comments in some instances.
Okay.
Michelle had some comments too, I think.
Oh, there we go. Got it. There's some weird link. All right, we'll just take a look at this.
And it seemed as though some of the things we talked about last week didn't quite come through in the new versions, like the application fees. I think we talked about application fees.
Well, we didn't have specifics for the application fees.
Right.
I thought, but if I missed that, then I
No, we never
apologize.
came up with a decision. We never had a
Okay.
decision.
Got it.
All right, so let's open, let's start with the checklist. Let's just see what we got here. Checklist, I think, was fairly simple. There wasn't much change to that. And let's open up the guidelines here. Let me get this open. Open an app. Okay. Getting there. All right. Let's open this up. All right. Let me do a quick share here. Nope, not that. It's so close. Where is it? There it is. Okay. How's that in terms of legibility for folks? Is it okay?
I think so.
Okay, so slight word changes, nothing major. Went through all the different suggestions from folks. Where we got here. Oh yeah, for recovery from, okay. Do you want to have it replace that of local disasters or funding to victims?
Well, it's not
recovery
to the
from?
victims, but it's to help them
Right.
recover from a disaster. So it's not like we're cutting them a check to buy new clothes.
Right, okay. So what do we want, how do you want to word that then? Funding to, or funding for recovery from? No, that doesn't sound right.
Funding for recovery from natural disasters or something like that.
Okay,
It's not necessarily, well, because that's not the way that's structured. It's like you're cutting a check
Yeah.
to person, rather than paying
Right.
for reconstruction of something or.
Right, that's true.
Could the word resident go in there then instead of victims? Just a question.
Or even take out the word that, take out the victim or resident, just recovery from natural local disasters.
Okay,
Because
recovery.
it could be a pretty broad situation.
Okay, because and we're detailing it in terms of fire, flooding, wind damage, but yeah, we're not doing specifics, as you say, for what we are doing. We're not doing clothing and things like that. It's more structural damage of things.
Right, right. And then it related to that particular subject, elsewhere in the document, there was a location, or maybe I was trying to add it, that this would really, the priority would be recovery from a disaster that's not otherwise covered by insurance or other. Yeah.
Okay. All right, so we've got this. This looks good. Let's resolve that. Okay, let's take a look at this. The revolving loan membership should select the chair. Okay. So you're saying I see. So the revolving loan fund committee selects their own chair as opposed to the board, which sounds like
Correct.
It's us. Okay.
Number A in the membership, should it say be Bristol residents and or Bristol business? To me, that says you gotta be both. Am I reading that wrong?
Eligible for membership on the revolving loan fund will be Bristol residents and Bristol business owners. Yeah. Can we do an
Just
and
us.
or? No, that's true. How about that? The revolving loan fund committee shall appoint one member of the revolving loan fund committee to serve as chairperson.
But I would say the RLFC membership.
Okay.
shall appoint.
Thank you. Okay. Yep, that looks good. We talked about the staggering of the 3-year terms, which you brought back. A lot of this was just mainly sort of formatting this, getting a little bit cleaner to look at. The main change I did was down here. This is pretty much all the same. Let's see. All right, what do we got here?
This just didn't make sense to me, and maybe I just wasn't reading it right.
Okay, personal guarantees of loans need. Yeah, that doesn't even. It's not even proper English.
Well, that's what I'm like. What does this mean?
Yeah.
Should the word "are" be in there after loans? Personal guaranteed of loans are needed for co-signers?
Are needed for co-signers, and other specific security arrangements may be made as a condition of the loan recommendations. Is that better?
Well, we get personal guarantees for both the signer. I mean, there's usually a personal guarantee by anybody who applies, so it's not just the co-signers.
Okay.
I'm not quite sure what this is supposed to say, but.
Okay. What are we asking? I mean, we're talking about the security of it. So would it be personal guarantees of loans are required? Are they required or just needed? I mean, or is that the same thing?
I think most all of them have personal guarantees, but I don't know that they specifically require them.
Okay. And so instead of co-signers, would you just say all applicants, or all applicants and co-signers?
Borrowers.
All
or
signees.
Borrowers, right? Signees. Or yeah, borrowers. Personal loans, personal guarantees of loans are needed for borrowers and all co-signers. How's that read?
I don't think you need all there.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. Does that make more sense now, Michelle?
Yeah, yeah.
Okay.
Well, should it say there though?
Yep.
If applicable after cosigners, because they may not have a cosigner, may not.
Well, you could
Just
say any
asking.
Yeah, well, it
cosigners.
just says, it says and, so if you don't have one, then
Yeah. Okay.
Well, that's what I mean. If you don't have one, then because you're not guaranteeing the personal loan for the. That's why I
oh, the
was
borrower
asking.
is guaranteeing it.
Right.
And if you have a cosigner, you want them to sign a personal guarantee too. I'm
That's
not,
why I
I mean,
said
you
it.
could-
In parentheses,
you could
should
add in
say
that.
if.
For borrowers and any cosigners.
Yeah, okay.
But yeah, I mean, without the end, it reads, but it makes it more clear if we add any in there. Okay.
more clear.
Okay, so the big change I made to this document was to clarify and make it a little bit easier to understand. So this section here originally had all of the exhibits that are located in this document right here. And I think instead of duplicating it in this document and then going to the other document and having the same thing there, I would rather see that we just reference the application form where those specifics are. There were a lot of the exhibits that were just slightly worded differently and weren't matching what was in that original document. And so my suggestion is to just reference this document for people to get the full information. And I think that's fine because that document is information for applicants as well as the application form. And so I think the loan application details could just be in that one document if people are okay with that. Should be handled administratively by the town treasurer. Okay. So town treasurer will send.
My
Val?
recommendation, yeah. I would expect the treasurer would be closely involved with the work of the loan committee.
Treasurer. Yes, I think you're right. Okay.
But does he sit on the committee, Valerie?
I don't believe the treasurer should be certainly not a voting member, but more as administrative support.
Okay.
So I just wondering if the chair, is that part of the chair's duty to send that? Because the town treasurer, to defend Anthony, doesn't know all the particulars why they've turned the applicant down. So do you really want the treasurer sending out the letter?
Oh, I see.
Well, would the letter have all the particulars for the denial or just the fact that it was
I
denied?
don't know, but I mean,
Well, when it's
I don't-
approved, who sends the letter? I think Brett usually sends a letter, doesn't he?
Well, that's the point. I think the chairperson should not be responsible for doing those kinds of administrative things, in my opinion. And when Jen and I talked about it a while back, she seemed to agree that more of that kind of stuff should be in-house.
should it say all correspondence to the applicant on approval or denial shall come from the town treasurer?
Shouldn't it be signed by Fred? That's how when we have to do the approval letters from the from Chris's board there, it's usually Kevin Brown that's signing them.
The
He
development
writes
review
them,
board.
I print them off and he signs them.
Okay.
Well, I think, yeah, you're right. I wonder, I mean, the Development Review Board has the authority. They have authority over the Select Board, but the Revolving Loan Fund Committee doesn't have authority. They just make a recommendation to the Select Board, correct?
Correct.
So I think that's why the chairperson perhaps doesn't have the ability or shouldn't have the ability to do that, and it should fall under a town employee to make that decision. And I think maybe I'm trying to understand Val's position. I think it's you would have the chairperson would meet with the treasurer, discuss the details, and then the treasurer would send an official letter out, whether it's approval, tabled, or declined.
Well, we're talking about the committee making recommendations to the select board. So the select board would ultimately make those decisions.
Okay, so in terms of the letter, it will really come from the decision of the select board to approve an application or decline an application.
Correct.
Okay.
So
we
why
would have
would, so why would the revolving loan fund town treasurer send out a request denied if it's got to be approved by the select board?
Well,
Or
yeah,
denied by the select board.
yeah.
Right. I mean, I guess that would be the official way of notifying an applicant. It wouldn't come from the select board or from Val. It would come from the treasurer.
Right, but it doesn't say anything about the select board here.
Oh,
Right,
I
it
see
just
what you're
says-
saying. Got it.
This is from the revolving loan fund committee.
Yes. Okay. Right. All applications will be reviewed and decided upon by the revolving loan committee, which is actually not the case. It's
Right, because
do
they
make
make
it-
recommendations.
They make a decision and then send that decision or recommendation to the board. So.
Correct.
Yeah,
Okay.
I mean, how do you word that?
right. Well, so
Can you say,
right, approve.
Leah, can you say all applicants will be reviewed, applications will be reviewed and a recommendation
Forwarded to the select board.
forwarded to the select board?
Yep.
So my question is though, is if it's denied by the revolving loan fund, I mean, I don't know if one's ever been denied. Would they then still send that recommendation to the select board and the select board has to approve that, correct? So it's got to come to the select board either way.
Correct. Well, that's an interesting scenario. Because there's another section in the document about an appeal.
Right,
then-
and that, I had that question the last time. It's like, they really don't have an appeal to the select board. There's no
Yeah.
process for that.
I mean, we should offer them a process. If we've denied them, I think we should offer them the ability to appeal. And
You're
ask
talking, you're
why
muted.
it was denied. Who, me?
No, Peker was talking. I could see him talking,
Oh.
but I couldn't hear him. So I said you're muted.
Talking to myself, I guess. If the revolving loan fund denied them, it would seem like they would be able to appeal, but if we deny them, there's no appeal.
Right, I think we were talking about the appeal process after the revolving loan fund denies, but if they deny them or decline to take that application, that goes to the select board for approval or denial, so. It's really
Section
the select
H.
board that makes the ultimate decision.
Based on their recommendation.
Right.
Yeah.
This is weird. Under section 4, jumping ahead a little bit, starts on page 6 under loan servicing, and then there's all these different sections, A, B, C, D,
Right,
and
Yep.
section H is appeals.
right.
So it's
Yeah.
interesting that appeals would fall under loan servicing. But details.
So wait, so applicant disagrees with the decision of the ruling on committee, the following procedures shall be followed. Applicant shall contact the chairperson and request a personal appearance before the committee for the purpose of appealing, so they can appeal to them. Right, but you're right. So it's the process, like, yeah, if they deny, I guess it's the time period between the denial and having it go to select board for our decision on the denial. Maybe you have a
Look at
time.
number 3 though, Ian. It says the decision of the revolving loan fund to review recommendation of a loan to the select board shall be final. So it sounds to me like it doesn't go to the select board if they refuse the recommendation.
Oh, I see.
Yeah.
Okay. So, wait, the decision of the revolving loan fund to refuse recommendation of a loan to the select board shall be final. So do they even have an appeal process then?
No, that's what I'm saying. There's no appeal process if they deny it.
I see. Well, we need to change that then, because we're telling them that in 1 and 2 that there is an appeal process, and in 3 we're saying that there isn't an appeal process.
Well, I don't know. I mean, I'm wondering if, part of this is if they approve a loan application, but it may not be exactly what they wanted, and they want to appeal that decision. I don't know.
Yeah.
Because I mean, the ones that I've done, none of them have ever been denied.
Yeah. Okay.
All that, the way I read that is that if they go through 1 and 2 and they still refuse recommendation, that's final once it comes to us.
Okay.
I think you can appeal, you do step 1 and 2, and if the revolving loan fund still refuses the recommendation, that's what's given to the select board, and that's final.
Okay. All right. That makes more sense. Yeah, I think you're right.
Should number 3 then say the decision of our LLC to refuse recommendation on an appeal of a loan? Should we get that in
After
there?
appeal?
After appeal? And don't put in there after the loan shall be final. Don't have to say the select board. The decision of revolving loan fund to hear your appeal is final. It doesn't go in front of the board. Is that what you're saying?
Oh, I see.
I'm asking, I'm not.
Well, no, I think it would still. Yeah. Does the select board need to agree with the?
Well, ultimately, it's our decision.
Right. Because the revolving
It's no
loan fund
different
are
than-
only making recommendations.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. So we need to keep that in there. It's similar to the design review committee.
Well, it's
We
no
make
different. It's no different than the ARPA money. We go with your recommendations and we still make the final call.
Okay. Yeah. All right. All right. Well, let's go back up to where we were. Okay. So that was the exhibit page. We like that. What do we got here? Remove the dash between the T and the H. Where's that? Oh yeah. Phew, clean that up. Resolve that.
I like the small ones.
Yeah, I know, it's nice. Set a flat application fee instead. Oh, that's right. Okay. So, well, where did we fall on this? There were thoughts for and against the 1%, given how large a project might be, versus a flat fee for everyone, regardless of the size of project, right?
I mean, to me, $50 is low, but I mean, I just think of the amount of administrative time it takes to set all of this up.
What's,
Yeah, I think $50 is low.
what's the size of a typical project that's funded by that committee?
They range. I mean,
Anywhere
300,000,
from 1,000 to
30,000.
70,000, yeah.
Right.
Okay.
I mean, it depends on
300,000,
how
yeah.
much money is in there, and I mean, they can request as much money as in there. That doesn't mean we're
Right.
gonna give it to them.
Right.
Right, no, I was just trying to get an idea in my head, like what is that 1% of a project?
Yeah, I mean,
Well, for a $10,000 loan, it's $100.
Right, I was just trying to figure out
Yeah.
over the course of a year, what might, and what do the fees look like right now?
yeah, I mean, there's a couple 30,000 ones, so
And then the applicant is also going to be responsible for a lot of other expenses, the legal and the closing and other things.
but they would have to be
But the way-
responsible for that anyway.
Mhm.
But the way that's worded, that 1% is used to offset some of that cost.
Yeah,
Do
if the
credit
loan is approved,
investigation.
this fee will be used to offset costs related to it. But it's the town costs, correct?
Right.
So do we have if we knew that, like, well, for most loans, it costs the town $250 to do these things, then I would say it's set up to 250. What are some other set fees that we have for other departments that we can maybe just use the same here? Administration fees, what would that be? I don't know if Sharon, if you know, in terms of what zoning or what, or
Well,
Sharon, if you had a recommendation of, like, yeah, it's at least 2 or 3 hours of our time to do this.
I don't know, because we don't typically do the documents, the attorney does.
Right.
Oh, okay.
Kevin
And
does.
all we do is record them. And we don't charge
Okay.
anybody that.
Yeah.
How
But
many?
then it's
how
up
many-
to the treasurer supposedly to pursue payments. If they don't make payments, then it's up to them to pursue those payments.
Well, he had a conversation with the bank today, so I don't, because they were asking if it was up to them to pursue, did we pursue, and I don't know where he left off with that.
Sharon,
Okay.
how many typical pieces of paper do you get to file in the vault with a loan?
Usually 2 or 3 documents
If
are
a business
recorded,
came
and they're
in-
usually anywhere from 2 to 5 pages. Because you got the
So if it
personal
was-
guarantee, you got the note, you've got, if there's some other type of collateral, I don't remember, it's been a while since we've done any.
So how much is the filing per page?
$15. And the
So if
town
you're doing
usually
5
gets
right
it.
there, if somebody came in without taking out a revolving loan fund and had 5 pieces of paper, you'd charge them $25 or $75?
$15 a page.
75, yeah, $15 per page.
$75. So should the application fee at least be what we charge a normal person to come in
Yeah.
and file it, put it in the vault?
Well, I think
Yeah,
they get
that-
charged that though, Joel, when Kevin does the
Oh,
paperwork,
okay.
part of the expenses is recording fees, so they have to pay
Oh, okay.
those.
All right.
Yeah, you
Do you
read the
get a
rest of the way
check,
down.
Sharon?
It says all the expenses are borne by the applicant.
Like I said, it's been a while since we've done one, so
Yeah.
I don't remember what we get money for what and what we, because sometimes we're just paying for the recording into the vault.
Right.
Well, so let me ask you this: are board members okay with setting a set amount? And if so, then we could change that and then figure out what amount we want to set, as opposed to changing it from a percentage.
Well, the way I read this, and maybe I'm reading it wrong, is that 1% is used to offset all the costs in the rest of that paragraph.
No,
And
it's
anything
only
above and beyond
used to
that-
offset costs related to a credit investigation. That's all it says. It says the applicant is regardless will
Yeah.
pay costs, all the closing costs, et cetera.
But then down below it says, we'll pay all the costs to a credit investigation.
Yeah, I think that's contradictory, but then I think really regardless of final disposition of the request, will pay all costs,
So-
including, I don't think related to a credit investigation. I mean, you do a credit report. I
So-
mean, I don't know what else other credit investigation you're gonna do.
Yeah.
What if we
Speaker.
set a fee of, what if we set a fee of $50 to submit the application? And then
Yeah.
add that, put that investigation into all other costs that are covered by the applicant.
That makes a lot of
I
sense
mean, I
to
think
me.
that's what,
Yep.
Yeah.
And especially
What's
because a
that?
lot of those fees or those other costs are somewhat predictable. They're pretty standard costs, whereas the percentage thing is unpredictable, perhaps. I mean, yeah, they're requesting maybe $20,000, you do a percentage of that and that's predictable, but as we talked about before, it's the same level of administrative effort for a 5,000 loan for a 20,000 loan. So
Yeah.
it's, that we shouldn't be necessarily penalizing the borrower because of the amount of money that they want to borrow. Sort
Gonna have to
Right.
change that next sentence, Ian.
I would say at least do 100 or maybe even 150 to be able to cover all of our costs. So I feel like we're always doing this where we've got our fees and then the fees are it's not enough to cover the time that our employees are working on it.
no, I don't have a problem with that. I was just looking to get the wording where it did what we wanted. I don't care what the
Okay.
amount is. Well, I shouldn't say I don't care, but
Yeah. Okay. So let's say we put it to 150 just for now. All applicants must be accompanied by a $150 non-refundable application fee payable to Town of Bristol. All right,
Delete that
and then
second sentence.
This. Yeah. Okay.
Will pay all
The
costs
applicant-
related to credit investigation, comma, I would take out all closing costs.
You can
Yeah.
go all the way to including.
Yeah. or credit investigation and closing costs, including but not limited to blah, blah, blah.
Okay.
Boy, by the time we're done, we won't even have to go to law school. We can just hang our plaque.
Thoughts on the fee, what it should be?
Well, to me, it's a little bit steep, but not, it'll stop the ones, I'm going in and ask for $3,000, and if I don't get it, I'm only out $50. It'll stop
Okay, yeah,
the,
but what does the bank charge when they come in and ask and apply for a
I have
loan?
not a clue. I can
Yeah,
find out.
I mean, there is a charge, it's like 200 something, but $150 for a $10,000 loan probably isn't much, but $150 for a $3,000 loan is probably pretty steep. And I think that's why they had it at 1%.
Yeah.
So that there was more of a fairness.
Well,
I mean, I just want it to be so it covers our costs and we're not out money by doing an application.
I don't,
mean,
I
what-
don't think the 1% covered our cost. I mean, because the 1% all went away. We didn't get to keep any of that.
that's right. It was used to offset other things.
Okay.
So at least
I'll have it
this way, there's a cost for,
Yeah.
and then,
Doing the
That's
and
gotta
then
be
if they
paid
don't
before
get the
they get
loan,
handed an application.
correct.
Or
And
as
then,
they
and
hand in
then
the
if they don't
application.
get the loan, they still have to pay all those other costs that we incurred.
Right.
Yeah. Okay. So we're folks was 100. So Jill thought 150 was a little steep. Do you want to do 100?
just,
You want to do 100?
so they can get if I came in on an application, I get handled an application, get it all filled out, and before I sign it, go, I guess I'm not gonna do this, I'm gonna go a different route. Then I not out anything except my time to fill out an application. Once I turn it in, it's gotta be accompanied with a check, correct?
Yeah.
Correct.
A non-refundable check.
A non-refundable check, yeah.
How about that?
Split the difference.
There you go.
Yes. Done. All right. Great. All right, what do we got here?
I can see the next time this is reviewed, that how the hell did they come up with that $125?
Yeah,
You negotiated it.
Flip a coin.
well, they
They take-
can go to YouTube and look at the video of us chatting about it on a Monday at 9:30 at night.
Yeah.
Val, why it's not likely the town will be listed as a beneficiary?
That's not necessarily true though, Val.
No, I don't know. It's not my thing.
Yeah,
I don't
I mean, I know, like when you, kind of like when you get mortgage insurance to the banks is listed as the insured. So this could be the same type of thing.
And we're gonna run this by VLCT, right? No, not VLCT. Fred County.
Aston County Economic Office.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I did mention that to them and they're agreeable to look it over.
Okay, great. Well, let's leave this one in for now. We'll leave Val's comment. Remove this requirement. Yeah, we talked about this last time.
Yeah, my comment is down there saying, I'm not sure we can do this.
Right. Okay. Well,
Yeah.
then it goes bye-bye. Okay.
That's the same thing as
that was for that.
Val's.
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay. This is pretty much the same as it was.
Ian, can you slide back up just a little bit? See the dark print? We're going along, Paul. Okay, no. I had a question. I wrote it down at work and I didn't bring it with me tonight. One of the places says the Village of Bristol, and we've got to obviously change that. One of the big bold headlines. I think it's way up at the top. It says the town of Bristol and the Village of Bristol. I don't think it says former village. Not that one. The town and Village of Bristol committed factors for that one.
Okay. Yeah, this is
There's
just our
same-
scoring system. So yeah, so we'll just do that. And then we do say Village Center. Can we say
Yeah, Village Center is fine with me. I was up the top. I was more concerned about.
That's fine. Yeah, that was right. Here we go. All right, so we're down here. What happens when the property is not owned by them at least? So how do you want to, Michelle, how do you want to
I don't know,
update
it's
that
just,
then?
I was just asking the question. It's like, well, what happens when they don't own the property?
Right.
Or maybe it's something like, maybe when the title to the property owner changes ownership, or the lease is terminated or something or other.
Right.
It's kind of like their situation with the bakery or the former tenant over there,
Yeah.
Cookie Loaf. You know, they rented that building. We financed the equipment.
Right. How's that? Just putting in what you said, or changes ownership or the lease is terminated except in unusual and extenuating circumstances.
I think so.
Okay.
Yeah, the
Yeah, I think
reason
that's
I
fine, though.
recommended the expected to be carried out is because we're not going to be monitoring that or verifying or enforcing that. What if it's not? I mean, what kind of recourse would we have if the rehabilitation isn't done exactly as required by some state agency?
Right.
But just putting it out there that it would be expected to be.
Yeah. That's good. And then, yeah, I left the, oh, you want this removed?
Well,
Is that
but the
me?
points thing, the points don't seem to make sense to me, since there are so many different categories of things that somebody who's not applying for housing or job creation, they're not going to score a lot of points. But
And honestly, the few that I've 3 or 4 that I've done, we have never used this system.
Okay.
I think
All right,
listing those as desires
I was gonna
or
say things to consider.
right aspirations or something. Just examples of some of the things that the loan fund could do or would be desirable.
Do you want to keep those in and just eliminate the point column?
I'm not sure how competitive those factors are.
Okay. So just take the whole page out?
There's- I'm not sure what other title. What was it? Examples of
Discussion
desirable
points.
outcomes. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Or discussion points. Yeah, sure. How about that?
Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, some of those are very nice aspirational statements, but not all applications are going to be, or not all proposals are going to be relevant to some of those subjects.
Right. So it's just to give you some assistance in terms of how you might look
Yeah.
and evaluate a project.
Yeah,
Right,
and
and
it might give some
Michelle says-
extra guidance to applicants about how framing their own applications,
Right.
things that might not have considered.
Right. And if Michelle says it hasn't been used or they haven't used it in the
Right.
it's been involved in.
I'm not saying they've never used it, but I
Right.
haven't
Yeah.
used it.
No,
Okay.
that makes perfect sense.
But you may
All right,
ask
well,
the
what I'll do is
questions, but you're
I'll,
not ranking them. Right, Michelle? You may ask some of those questions. How's this going to fit in, for number of jobs you're going to create? You may ask
I
it, but
mean,
you won't.
that may be that, if they have a good business plan, that information is already answered in there.
Right.
Right.
Okay. So what I'll do is the next round, I'll just, with our changes that we've made to this document now, I will save a copy and send it to folks just as a PDF so we can look at it again.
At what point should I forward it on to the Addison County Economic Development Corp folks to look it over?
I'd say probably now,
Yeah,
after this evening, if
Sure.
you feel that's what, I think we're in a good shape. I think it's, the formatting's there and I think we've answered and updated most of the questions that we've had.
Cool.
Has Anthony
all right.
looked at this at all, Val,
No, he hasn't.
not much.
Yeah, because I mean, Jen's on the committee and I know she has not looked at it because we started this before she got on.
Right.
She might
Yeah.
be one to get some input because she's
Yeah.
been through the process.
Right.
Of what the town has had to do, so.
All right, yeah, I'll save a next copy with today's date online. Okay, all right, let's open up the other document quickly. So all right, so for this one, here, let me share it for you before I start talking about it. That it? Yeah. So I changed the name of this and I added an application form since we didn't have that in the title of this prior to that. The document was called revolving loan fund application, but we didn't have that in the title. So I've added that in there. And pretty much have everything that we sort of talked about previously. I did get some updated numbers from the Addison County Trust in terms of the income. So the median family income was 93.9, and then we've got low, and then low, moderate for 1 and up to 6-person households. And so the numbers that she gave me was on a PDF, and it was 100% of the whatever it was. What the heck was
Poverty
it?
level?
Yes, and I don't know, is that what we use? Or do we use an 80%, or is it a certain one that we look at?
I can tell you it's different state agencies, you use different numbers. There's no set.
Okay.
I can tell you
I guess
that. Know what
so
Bristol has used in the past.
Right, we could choose, yeah. So that was one question I had in terms of these numbers. That was the 100% level, which obviously are enormously different than the numbers that had previously been in this document. Did you make any comments on this document, Val? Do you remember?
Nope, I didn't have a
Maybe.
chance.
Okay, that's fine. Yeah, so I sort of tidied up these were from scans originally, so I sort of just tidied everything up.
Can you go back up?
and-
I saw 1%.
Percent was in there, Ian, 1% right there. Gonna have to change that to the 125.
All right, so complete the attached application for revolving loan fund assistance and submit it along with your non-refundable application fee of $125.
What a great number.
Payable by check or money order to the town of Bristol to the town administrator's office. Should we say, is it town administrator or the town clerk's office?
Town clerk's office.
I like to use the word municipal office because the treasurer's in here, the clerk's in here.
Right,
administrator's
yeah.
here.
The what office?
Municipal office.
Oh, yeah.
Or if you're making a check or money order, it should go to the town treasurer. But I don't know what they do for like zoning fees.
It's all made out to the town of Bristol.
Yeah, and Chris puts it in his system and then he brings it to us to run through the cash register.
Are you okay,
So
Sharon? You
everything
all right?
runs through us.
Are you okay with that, Sharon, to the municipal
I'm
office?
fine with that.
Okay. And then we got, so these are the,
Go back up to that that last paragraph. We were talking about the decision approval, tabling, or denial. We want to make sure that we're on the same page with this. Or that the other sections, that they speak to each other.
within 5 working days after its meeting, the revolving loan will make a recommendation concerning this. Yeah, that's correct. I mean, that fits with the other wording in the other document.
In the other document, if I read it that if the committee did not recommend approval of the loan, it didn't get to the select board at all,
Oh, right.
and that it just stopped there.
No, we made it get to the select board.
Oh.
On the other.
We did? I don't think we did.
Yeah.
No, remember on the second appeal? Remember on the appeal, they weren't going to be able to appeal if they asked for a reconsideration to the revolving loan fund committee. And if they recommended still not to give you the money, you couldn't appeal it to the board
The second
Right.
time.
the second time.
Right.
Yeah, so, well, yeah, that's at the point in terms of the appeal when an applicant disagrees with the decision of the revolving loan fund committee. I read this one as it's the revolving loan fund committee is making the recommendation to approve, and then it goes to the select board, not a recommendation, not denying it. And then it's up to us to make the final decision. They've made the recommendation
Yeah.
to make the loan, and then we're deciding if we're gonna take that recommendation or deny that recommendation.
Should that second paragraph say then revolving loan fund committee, any denial of, put the language in that we put in the other one, any denial can be reviewed, appeal can be made to the revolving loan fund committee?
Well,
Can't you just refer to that section? You know, if you're gonna
Refer
do
to
that, rather
section,
than
that's
write
good.
it.
Mm.
This is just your, explains the process, right?
Right,
Right.
yeah.
Yeah, you're correct, Peter.
Okay. So this is what essentially that section that I took out. It was Exhibit 1, Exhibit 2, and it was just detailing all of this in that other document. So I removed that, and then we're just referencing this.
Mhm.
And this is all the same. We did add in our, have you ever filed for bankruptcy? And do you have delinquent taxes due? That was our new one that we put in last time. This is all the same as our updates last time. It's just mainly the formatting of different things. We have all this. There you go. That's it for that. So, yep.
That one there, Exhibit 5, all applicants must
Yep.
complete a final application available from the offices of the town administrator or from the town treasurer or what? Where is that application, final application form provided by? What should word go there?
What's the final application form? Is that not this document, which is the application form?
Or should it just say available from the municipal offices of the town of Bristol?
Yeah, maybe. Is there, do we know what, or no, not final, I'm reading that wrong. Financial application form. I swear that just said final. Yeah, where is that available? Do we know what that is? Sharon, do you know what that is?
Financial application, I thought it was included with the documents, but I don't know. I'd have to look at one that somebody's done.
Okay. I mean, I think we can just say available from the municipal offices.
Yeah, that's probably fine.
Okay. Because that's where it is. It's not one person. Okay. I think that's good. Alrighty. Yeah. Do we want to? So we talked about we're ready for these to review. Do we want to share these with Jen Myers? Have her take a look. Have Anthony take a look, and then send it to Fred Kenny and co.
Yeah, it would be good to get, some additional eyes on it before going there.
Okay. All right. Super. All right. Thanks very much, everyone, for working through that. I know it's been a long slog, but we're getting there. I'll make a new version of this in that folder and just give it to tonight's or today's date. 7. Boop. Okay. Double check that that's actually there. Save. As it is. Good, it's there. Okay, fantastic. So I think we're good with that. We know what the next steps are. Let's see, where are we at? Ah, yes, item 6. Consider preparations, logistics, and other details for the in-person March 6th annual police district and town meetings. So we're all going going to be in person. Michelle, you mentioned not being there. Or
I won't be there Monday.
You're okay. So you're not going to be at that meeting.
No.
Okay. So we'll just put a something in your place.
Put a dummy there, a blow up doll.
Okay. A blow up doll. Okay.
Oh my
Put a cap
God.
on you and glasses.
I will limp in.
Or wheel in.
Yeah, wheel or
in,
limp in.
Limp in. Anybody else not going to be there?
I'm planning to be there.
Okay.
Yes.
And other board members, I assume, will be there.
Mhm. Plan on it.
Okay. Okay.
Good
and
Lord
then in
willing,
terms of-
right?
That's right. I've had dealt
And the creek
with
don't
him
rise.
a couple of months ago, so.
Yeah. I think when Joel rolls in, he's going to get a standing ovation. I would
Right.
think. In terms of the talking points, we've often discussed sort of what different areas that board members might speak to. I think in the last time it's kind of been on the fly in terms of what we've answered. Val usually fields a lot of the questions, having the highest amount of knowledge, and then defers to us if there are specifics about things. But I don't know if people want to tackle certain areas. I know, Joel, you suggested this previously, sort of you and Peter usually handle public works. I think Darla has handled recreation department.
Yeah.
I've done, what have I done? I've done police and fire, and probably some other things.
And if someone asks about solid waste, the district or
Yeah.
the water department, I'll try to have those in.
Yeah.
We
I don't
can
know.
we can just say we gave it all to Michelle and she's not here tonight, so we don't have an answer.
She can be reached at 802.
But yes, please see Michelle at.
30,000 feet in the air.
There you go.
Yeah, right, exactly. If you could zoom in from the plane, that would be
Yeah, right.
Michelle's got it all up in the cloud. And you can just
Yeah,
see-
right.
Literally, right.
She's
Yeah,
taking it hostage.
yeah. We'll just defer to whatever we've got there in your place, and just carefully put the microphone close to it. I've talked to Sean at NEAT to discuss the logistics of the evening, and it seems like we're pretty much set. NEAT has a new person, or they have another person that is working with them that'll be running camera for NEAT's broadcast, and Sean will be the town essentially, as we've done in the past. We'll hire Sean to set up the microphone and the audio visual for the evening. We will start with just a table and maybe a couple of wireless mics just down on the floor, so we can do the police district meeting, which we've done in the past like that. And then we'll go up onto the stage, and there'll be the 4 select board members and whatever we use for Michelle, the town administrator, and Sharon, town clerk, and then our moderator, Jennifer. So they'll be up there, and we'll have microphones for all of us, or pretty close to all of us. We will be, let's see what else. The Zoom will be just through one of our machines. We can just start it, maybe my laptop or the town laptop, and essentially just needs to be able to start the meeting so it's the right login. And then when people are watching from home, they will essentially see NEAT TV's camera. So they're kind of in place of the owl, as it were. So when we're speaking, essentially it'll switch to an image of their camera, and we'll pick up the microphones from us. And that's what people will see highlighted when they're at home as the main speaking. So everything else will be muted pretty much, and all sound will come from the microphones, and on the camera, the image will be mainly from NEAT.
Ian,
so that seems like, yep.
Sorry, can people from home ask questions through?
Yes. So we can, I think we'll monitor, I can maybe monitor the chat. Perhaps Sharon can do that too, or maybe
Yeah, I'm
Valerie.
happy to help with that too.
Okay, great. Yeah, maybe 1 or 2 of us could be on the chat. And so I think, and I've, in my correspondence that I put out on Front Porch Forum regarding this, I've said that people are able to submit questions if they're on Zoom. You're just not able to vote for the floor vote. So you need to be in person. So
Ian,
hopefully
is there
we'll
going to
just
be a
monitor.
couple? couple kids walking around with the microphones for people who are
Work-
speaking, or are we
working
gonna
on
make them
that.
come
I've
up to
reached
the
out to-
front?
Yeah, I reached out to Bill Mount with regard to the Boy Scouts who we've used in the past. And so I'm waiting to hear back from him. So
Okay.
we would have probably a wired mic on the floor at the front for perhaps representatives to speak into, or maybe they would just take one of the wireless mics. And then we'd have a couple of floating wireless mics throughout the evening that hopefully Boy Scouts will be able to direct to someone in the audience. It makes it a little bit easier to do that as opposed to people getting up and going to a microphone. So we'll see
Ian,
how
is
that
it
works.
Is it possible, Ian, to get 4 mics? So if you had 4, or at least 3, one in the center, so they go, because sometimes they always they're out on the ends and somebody's over in the middle, they gotta go all the way around. Is
I
it
think we
possible to
have, the
get 3
town
mics?
has, in terms of the system, the town has 2 wireless mics, and those,
Oh, okay.
and we generally cover, we can put another one if people wanted to get up and go to a microphone, we could do a wired one. We've generally just had like one half of the room has been one wireless mic and the other has been the other wireless mic. So
Maybe
I
the
think
third
we're-
one, maybe the third one be on a pedestal, a third of the way up the back,
Yeah.
in the middle.
Yep.
hall.
Yeah,
You
I'm
could do
just
that.
wondering if we maybe have them all come to the wired mic, because what I find is that people just start talking before the microphone gets there, and then you can't hear them. And if people are on Zoom, they're really not going to be able to hear them.
Yeah. Yeah, we can definitely do that. We can put in wired mics and encourage that. And I can talk to Sean about that. That isn't an issue. It just means that there's more. I mean, we'll put some distance between the chairs. I don't think it's going to doesn't need to be as packed as it has been in previous meetings. And then we can just have it be wired mics that people stand up and go to. They can line up for their questions. So that's all set. One thing that Fred, emailing with him, he's organized in the past is the refreshments. That's usually the Masons and other kind groups around town that have supplied that. I asked if Jennifer had availability to do that. She doesn't, so I think that would go to the town offices to sort of organize that and reach out to Cecil Foster. And so I made that suggestion, and I don't know if that is okay. I didn't have a response from that.
In talking with Meredith earlier today, she said particularly under the current circumstances, the rec department does not have bandwidth to take that on.
Okay.
Well, given Gail's injuries, neither does Sharon.
No, and I don't know what I'm gonna do about Tuesday, keeping the office open, because I think I have
Right.
to have BCA approval not to have it open, so Val might have to just stay down here during the day Tuesday. We'll work it out. But
Okay, I'll reach out to Cecil then.
I mean, it's usually just cookies and coffee.
Yeah.
Well,
yeah, but you
Shaw's
gotta
usually-
have
Shaw's
somebody
usually does
stand
something.
there and make the
Yeah.
coffee too, so.
Right.
Yeah.
Oh, believe me, I spent many a night back there.
Yeah. I'll reach out to him and see what his availability is and what his thoughts are on that matter. And I'll get back to you guys.
Now, those, the refreshments were for a fee, right? Folks paid some money for a cookie or coffee?
No.
No?
They
They're
were
all
free.
always free.
No, they were
No,
free.
because items were usually donated.
Yeah, they were generously donated.
I
The-
see.
the
People used to,
different
people used to
organizations.
ask if they could make a donation, but we
Right.
usually didn't take it.
Yeah, I was gonna say
Okay.
there's usually a donation jar or something or other out
Right.
front, but
Okay, I'll reach out to him and I'll let you know what is happening with that. Any other questions regarding logistics and what we need to do? Does anyone have any feedback from taxpayers, from residents regarding the town report, regarding our budgets this year? No one's spoken to me about
No.
the contents of that.
I did,
Sharon will
I
be,
did
Sharon will
have
be the
one,
one to
pers-
get all the gruff.
Right, that's true.
Well,
Peter?
I did have one person reach out and say that he found a couple areas where we hadn't spent the money in the past 3 years, and they were large amounts. And I said, I can understand 1 year being there because sometimes we use that money to offset other costs. But I said, I can't understand 3 years. I told them we're pretty particular about going through and making sure. So when I get a minute, I told them I would peruse it and see if I could find it and maybe
Okay.
give them an explanation.
He didn't tell you what it was?
No, he couldn't remember for sure.
Oh, okay.
Okay.
But I said, we're really careful about that because that's one of the things we look at when we're budgeting is if the money's not being spent on a regular basis. I mean, I said, we have notes, we have side notes on our budgeting. So if it happens one year, we typically know, but I said it shouldn't be 3 years in a row that the money's not spent and it's still put into that specific line. So I can get with him too and see if he can remember what it was.
Okay. That's
And
great.
Meredith, myself, and probably most of DPW will be here Monday afternoon around 2 o'clock to set up the chairs. We've got to pull out all the voting booths, which will have to be set up after the chairs are folded up Monday night after the meeting. So there's a lot of setup for that. If you guys can help after the meeting's done, help taking the chairs down and setting up the voting booths.
Absolutely. And I'm going to continue.
Yeah,
to
if
do
we can
my,
if we can just get picking the chairs up started, the people that are left around will help as well. So
yeah,
that works pretty well.
Yeah, fairly decent assistance there. I'll continue to do the front porch forum posts. I don't know if you wanted to post something on Facebook, Val. Should I just send it to you and you can post that? I think you'd be
Yeah, you go ahead. Yeah, or I can see it on Front Porch Forum, but yeah, I was planning on doing a notice to Instagram and Facebook.
Okay, yeah, so I'll continue with that. I ran the wording by Sharon. She made some updates, and so I'll just start doing that and just reminding people about obviously the in-person town meeting and then the voting the next day. So I'll continue with that this week. Anything else? All right, excellent, thank you. Moving on. Item 7, review and approval of the February 13th, 2023 meeting minutes.
As I noted, I didn't have a chance to review them myself, so I thought they were handy to include partly for the revolving loan fund discussion, but also just to keep moving.
Was anyone able to look at them?
I did
I
not.
looked at them, but I probably had some changes. I didn't get a chance to be that particular at that time.
Okay. All right. Maybe let's push that until the next meeting, or not next meeting, but probably the meeting after, right?
The March 13th.
Yeah, so we're gonna have a meeting next week, and then we'll have another one on the 13th, the following Monday, and then 2 weeks later.
Now, it's my understanding that the meeting next week is town meeting, so it's not really expected to be a regular select board meeting. Is that right?
Right.
Correct.
Right.
That's correct.
I just wanted to make sure that you were still
Yeah.
planning to have one on the 13th.
I mean, we're not gonna get,
Are we planning on meeting at 6 downstairs prior to the police district meeting, or are we
No.
just gonna meet upstairs?
I
We
think
usually
upstairs,
used to meet at 6 to talk to Fred before
Oh,
he,
yeah.
if there's anything he needs to know. So I don't know if Jennifer wants to do that.
Well,
or
she
needs
was
to do
here,
that.
she was here today and asked if we thought there was anything that people would ask about, if we'd heard any scuttlebutt, and said there might be some questions on the Lincoln thing that's on the ballot for Tuesday. There also might be questions on the Have a Heart food shelf, because we're the only town that they're asking money for, but they serve 4 or 5 towns. This is the first year they've done it, but I did ask the question because that's the first thing that came to my mind when I saw it was for all 5 towns. Is everybody getting asked? And the answer was no, they're just doing Bristol for this first year. As far as that, like I told her, you never know what is going to come up. Maybe someone might question the Bristol Rescue Squad because they're up for being voted whether or not they stay tax-free.
Tax exempt.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, for the next 5 years. So
Okay.
rest of it's pretty standard, so. But you never
Okay.
know
Yeah,
what somebody's gonna do.
The Have a Heart, I know, I think because they're situated in Bristol and it's out of Bristol, they're doing Bristol first, but I think they do have plans in the following years to go to all 5 towns.
Right, but this first time they didn't, so.
Correct. I think it just in terms of the complexity of doing that, I think.
But you never know who might pick up on it. Why
That's
are
right.
we giving money to them to feed all these other towns?
That's
I
right.
don't
No,
know.
absolutely. No, it's good. It's good to know these things. Yeah, I think probably
Not that the
meeting
other,
with-
it's not that the other towns don't donate, because when we do the food drive through the fire department, we incorporate all 5 fire departments.
Right,
Every one of them
but this
takes.
is the first year they've asked for money, so.
That's right.
Yeah.
First appropriation. Okay. I think, yeah, in terms of meeting, I could reach out to Jennifer to see if she wants to meet beforehand, and she might. And so it might be a 6 p.m. that we would all meet there. I mean, we definitely need to be there earlier. So we have a 6:30 start for the police district meeting. So maybe we just want to arrive if we can at 6 to be able to look over things and get ready, if that's okay with everyone.
I mean, we have to warn it as a 6 o'clock start meeting, and we meet downstairs, and if there's any other business that's floating around, it's only going to be a week, so chances are there won't be, but that's typically why we did it. That and to
Well,
go
I was
over
thinking, right. Do we have to warn it as a 6:30 or as a 6 o'clock if we're just, I guess we do.
If
it's
we're all
if it's
together, we do.
Yes,
4
we
of
do.
us. Yes. Okay. I guess I'm okay with that. I've only done one in-person meeting since I've been on the board before we didn't do them, and I can't remember what we did. I guess we did meet downstairs. I can't remember. No. What's everyone
We
else's
did.
thoughts? Are they? We did. Okay. So let's.
I mean,
so let's
it just gives us a chance to talk to each other and make sure we're all on the same page before we go upstairs is all.
Yeah. See how many pitchforks people are carrying in the audience.
How many things you're gonna throw Michelle under the bus?
Yeah, we can start to build our list.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's warn it for 6 p.m. It'll start downstairs, and then at 6:30 the police district meeting will be upstairs, and then the town meeting discussion will be even further upstairs on the stage.
Yep.
Okay.
Followed at 7. So that'll be
starting at, yeah. Okay, super. You have all that info, Val?
Yep.
All right, lovely.
How does the public understand that they don't need to be there at 6 o'clock? How do we?
Because the notice will say the town meeting starts at 7.
Okay, all right, thank you.
Yeah, it'll
Yeah,
say
we can
it'll
make that
say
clear.
that the select board meeting starts at 6, and then the police district meeting starts at 6:30, and
Okay.
the town meeting starts at 7.
And
Okay,
what
thank
I
you.
can do is I'll create on Front Porch Forum, since you can do calendar events, I'll just create a calendar event for each of those items. So if people happen to look at the calendar or use the calendar on Front Porch Forum, they'll see that it's 3 different events as opposed to just one single one that runs through the whole thing.
Got it. Yep.
Okay, thank you. Let's move on. How do we even get on that discussion? That was the meeting minutes. I don't know. Chapter 8. Item 8. Authorize accounts payable warrant and any liquor or tobacco licenses.
Okay, the AP warrant is 73,147.65. Nothing out of the ordinary. For tobacco substitute endorsements, I have one from Shaw's and one from Champlain Farms. And then I also have Bobcat Cafe request to cater permit for the March 10th event that will be upstairs, which is the gentleman who went to Greenland. He's giving a presentation of his trip. So
Sounds good.
They're requesting a catering permit for,
Okay. And Sharon wants a motion for that, so I'd entertain a motion.
Most to approve all three.
Okay. Motion and a second. We'll say that Michelle is a second for that.
Sure.
Any further discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor say aye, raise your hand. Aye.
Aye.
All those against, nay. Motion carries. Item 9, Select Board Roundtable. Let's start with Michelle.
I think I'm good.
Okay. Darla.
I haven't left my house in 3 weeks. I'm good. I haven't seen anybody to talk to.
No, not even passing by your window. People are waving at you.
Nah, yeah, from a distance.
Peeker, do you have anything this evening?
I am good.
All right. And finally, Joel.
And I'm good.
I'm good as well. Fantastic. Thank you. Item 10, Town Administrator's Report. Anything to add, Val?
No, nothing to add to the written report at this time.
Okay. Thank you very much. There were no correspondence received or reported for today. And I don't believe we have an executive session.
Just a very brief one.
Oh,
Personnel.
I thought we did.
okay. Go for it.
Ready? Is it personnel, right, Val?
Personnel, correct.
I make a motion, we enter into executive session to discuss personnel per 1 VSA, section 313.
There's a second for that. Thank you.
Second.
All those in favor
Third.
say aye, raise your hand.
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. All those against, nay. Motion carried. All right. For an executive session. Thanks, Jimmy.
Good night, Jimmy.
See you later.
Bye, Jimmy.
Thank you very
Got all
much.
my crowd free.
Thank
All
you,
my
Bruce.
people left.
All right. Okay, you got rid of